I'll call this meeting to order. Meeting of Thursday, January 25th, Board of Directors. Have a roll call.
Yes. President Zuko,
Here.
Director Bella,
Here.
Director Schmidt,
Here.
and Director Wheeler.
Here.
Great, we have a quorum.
Excellent. Pledge allegiance. I will ask Director Schmidt.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have we received any public comment? No, and no one online?
Nope.
Okay. So item 3 is agenda review, additions, deletions. Do we have any requests for modifications to the agenda tonight?
Anything from the VP on that? Oh, okay.
No, we're good. Okay, on to item number 4, acknowledgements and presentations. So tonight we have Virginia Chang Corrali. Did I get that right?
Great pronunciation.
I think there used to be a volleyball player that had kind of a similar vibe for their last name. I might have been different, but I'm not sure. Who is a member of LAFCO and is here to talk to us tonight. Introduce yourself and make be available for any questions that the board and staff might have. So I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me here, and thanks, Kat, for having the foresight to agendize so that if you have any questions, you can ask. My name is Virginia Chang Corrali, as Matt said, and I am the special district representative for San Mateo County LAFCO. And I've been on there since, I think, July, August. And so I just wanted to introduce myself to kind of put a face with special districts, right? I mean, because we're kind of lost sometimes in translation, even though we play a very important role in governance for, essential services like what you do for Mid-Peninsula Water and like I do for the Menlo Park Fire Protection District and the San Mateo County Harbor District. So I just wanted to introduce myself and kind of give you a little bit of overview of what we've been doing since I've been on the board. And we've done a couple of MSR reviews, one for the town of Hillsborough and one for the city of Burlingame. And of course, we're looking at 2 special districts right now. I mean, I'm a big special district advocate. I actually live in unincorporated West Menlo Park. And so, that really special districts like the fire district are major essential services provider, for example. But right now we're looking at East Palo Alto Sanitary District and having it, because of the financial issues, kind of fold into an independent special district for the city of East Palo Alto. And then also the Broadmoor Police Protection District, which is kind of an ongoing situation. And so nothing has been decided on that issue, but I think the East Palo Alto Sanitary District issue is going to be brought to us at a special meeting on February 7th. Our last meeting was last week. Our meetings are on the 3rd Wednesdays of every odd month at 2:30. And so I was just elected to be on the budget committee for LAFCO, San Mateo County LAFCO. My background is finance, mainly in investments. So that's what I brought to the table in my 2 offices. But I'm happy to answer questions, or, if you have any questions later, you can always reach me as well. But I wanted to thank you for inviting me here and letting me know that there is someone looking out for special districts.
It's interesting that you brought up East Palo Alto. I work for the city of Palo Alto, and that sanitary district sends its wastewater to our facility for treatment. And I'm not in charge or responsible for the treatment side of it. I manage the collection side on the Palo Alto side as well. But I was actually literally on a call today where Palo Alto was sorting through what do we need to do to let our council know about potential change in governance, because, I guess that they submitted I don't know the technical term, of request for review of the decision, but the decision was, as I understand it, to take that special district and roll it in under the city.
But it would still, yes, that's right. So that was decided on, I think, in November of 2023. And it's still a special district, but it's just in a different governmental
Governance,
structure, right? And so the East Palo Alto Sanitary District has appealed it, and that's what we're gonna be looking at
Right,
on February 7th. I mean, just so you know, I mean, part of East Palo Alto Sanitary District is in Menlo Park, right? My big thing, which I think not the board did go with this, or the commission did go with my suggestion of, inviting that council member that represents that small but very active Willows area of Menlo Park to kind of weigh in or be on this advisory committee, because it does take away their right to vote, because
Yeah.
they can't vote for the city council for East Palo Alto, right?
right,
So we'll just see what happens, but that's been a huge, a huge issue for the current sanitary district board, East Palo Alto Sanitary District. But given the history and the financial situation of the sanitary district, this probably makes the most sense. And I mean, because my fire district works with East Palo Alto. East Palo Alto is in the Menlo Park Fire Protection District. And so we are familiar with, some of the challenged infrastructure, like water pressure there. I mean, that's a big deal for a fire district, right? And their water pipes. And so whether or not the new structure will be better just for their sanitary needs and their water, their pipes and all of that, not water, but their pipes, remains to be seen, but something had to be done. And
Yeah.
maybe this is the thing that lights the fire under both agencies.
yeah, because I understand that the issue was, and you know more about this than I do, I'm very tangential, even in the city of Palo Alto, that they were withholding, that the governance was withholding approval of development based upon capacity
Yes,
assumptions.
that's really the underlying, I think
Right.
that's the underlying thing. And then, of course, that becomes a philosophical
Right,
issue too, right? Because East Palo Alto couldn't develop in the way they wanted to.
right,
And without having it cost like tens of millions, I think even in some cases, hundreds of millions for some of the developers, so the larger commercial, because it was for every development, mainly commercial development.
and I think their request for review, correct me if I'm wrong, this was a summary that was given to me, so I didn't review the original the original information. Was related to, I guess the governance came back and said, and this is what you guys are gonna be reviewing at LAFCO, that they would change how they're approving development, that they have the capacity, they're going to issue will serve letters now. And then as sort of the agency that receives the sewage, if you will.
Yeah.
We're hopeful that they actually do have the capacity. I mean, if they don't have the capacity, it's ultimately not gonna get to us, so maybe that's not it's sort of a moot point, but it was interesting, the change, given what I thought the basis of the original decision was to what the response for your request to review is based on.
Right, and so I haven't read all of the information, because we just had another meeting on some other issues, but that is why, they kind of want to see how they can fix things, right? But the thing is, the hope is that the city of East Palo Alto will contract with the West Bay Sanitary District, right? So it's not as if someone or another agency who would be doing this work doesn't know what it's doing. They've been actually quite successful, right? And they already provide service to part of East Palo Alto already. So my whole thing was, how do you work with the two agencies, East Palo Alto Sanitary District and West Bay Sanitary District? What other opportunities might there be for swapping or something, because of I'm really stuck on this little area in Menlo Park that is now going to be under the East Palo Alto City Council's jurisdiction. So they're still paying taxes, but they're not able to vote on who their representatives are.
Yeah.
So, there are different ways of structuring this, and I've offered an alternative, but basically just to see if West Bay Sanitary District can take over or release whatever they're doing and then let East Palo Alto Sanitary District / City of East Palo Alto release that part of Menlo Park and then bring that under West Bay. But I mean, that's just one little cockamamie idea.
Yeah.
And so we'll see, if that's even a viable option. So they haven't even talked about it. So but that's just something I've just been
The
thinking.
interesting thing in this whole effort that you guys are doing for me is, especially as it relates to this district, is the land use authority isn't the district.
That's right.
And so ultimately they were becoming a land use authority through their withholding of will serve letters.
Yeah.
That's the allegation. I don't know the
That's-
facts, but
I think
that's what I
that's-
understand.
I think that is a fair assessment.
And so to us, is our ability to approve or not approve land use or growth or whatever. That's not our mandate.
No, but, because my fire district is in a very similar situation that they're in terms of, we cannot obviously, make decisions on land use, right? But you do have some responsibility, I think, as a special district and including your water district, right? There's expansion and growth to see if you can provide adequate services and, therefore work with the cities that you represent or the towns, like we have East Palo Alto, the town of Atherton and Menlo Park within the fire district, right? So there's that, I'm sure you've read about this big development that's supposed to go in where the Sunset Building is right now.
Yeah, 50
So-
stories tall.
Yeah, that tower. And so my whole thing was, well, can we meet the needs of that type of development? Because that is more significant than what Facebook did and what Bohannon did with the Hotel Nia out near Marsh and 101, right? So we have to, work, and to be fair, like Facebook and David Bohannon, they actually worked with us. So, we came to an agreement so that we could provide adequate fire protection services, right? Which meant infrastructure like water. So that's where I think your role as a special district is very important to provide guidance to the city. So because basically it's public safety and public health for what you do, right? So the residents that you represent need to know that, you're there, but you're not there to block things either, which I think maybe East Palo Alto Sanitary District might have been doing. And that was, because this isn't just a 1-year situation that the residents were facing. This was like decades of this behavior. And then once development started ramping up and East Palo Alto has had a lot of development. I mean, we can tell from the fire district, just from our fund balance, which is now about $99.7 million, just because of the development and the tearing down of homes like in Atherton and the reassessment once they're built. And East Palo Alto is going through the same thing. But at some point you have to be, as a special district, partners with the land use agency that makes the decisions rather than the impediment. And so, when you have decades of this, it becomes a problem because it does provide local economic development for a city like East Palo Alto that needs that kind of revenue.
Yeah. Any questions from board or staff? Yeah, please.
So, hello.
Hi, Louis.
Well, thank you so much for addressing us. I think I can speak from a little bit of experience. I think you are the first person from LAFCO, besides Martha Poyados, I don't know.
Oh, she's the former executive
The former
director.
executive
Yeah.
director. She's the only one that came to our meetings a couple of times, maybe a few more. But you're the first director from the LAFCO board that actually came to visit us. So we're talking about land use issues and all of that. So none of you probably remember, but the Mid-Peninsula Water District, when I joined, I did not join the Mid-Peninsula Water District. I was not elected to the Mid-Peninsula Water District. I was elected to the Belmont County Water District.
Yeah.
That was the name
How
of
long
our
ago?
district, Belmont County Water District. And then I was one of the big proponents to change that name because we did not represent just the city of Belmont. And also to open the doors for any expansion of services that we were already giving, and maybe we could have it in the future. And that's how the Mid-Peninsula Water District was created, the name and everything else. So But, funny, I also heard you, mention, the sanitary district and also, Broadmoor. Do you usually take a close look to these districts when they are in financial problems? Because, a long time ago, even before my time, this district came in front of the voters twice.
Which one, Mid-Peninsula? Yeah,
Was
or
Belmont
what,
County,
Belmont,
Belmont
yeah.
County Water District came in front of the voters twice to merge with the city. And the proponent of the joining of the city lost twice because our constituents wanted the district to stay as a district. They figured this is the best service that they could have. They don't want to even try to approach it any other way. This is the way they wanted to do it, so. But LAFCO always gets into the picture when we're going to take over, merge, do whatever. And so anytime LAFCO kind of comes to or talks to us, we go like, oh my God, here we go again.
Not this time, though.
No, I'm here to
So I'm
introduce
glad to
myself.
hear you say that you are a big
I am,
proponent of special district, because you are also in the harbor
yeah.
district and also in the fire district, so I'm glad we have a good champion at
Well,
LAFCO,
thanks,
so.
Liz. Well, so the Harbor District went through this very, well, not what you went through, but went through a process where it was looking at being dissolved, the Harbor District, right? Because it was so, the governance was just so crazy. And it wasn't just like over a short period of time, it was for decades. And so I think as a Hail Mary, I was asked to kind of apply for the appointment to the Harbor District and to the Harbor Board to see what we can do to fix this. Because I was I'm just saying, I was on the civil grand jury a couple of years, and the foreperson for the second year. And my year as the foreperson, we looked at a lot of different issues like pension issues and financial and also administrative, but financial issues were the main thing. And so I guess they're like, oh, Virginia, the Harbor Districts, and this was like in the 7 or 8 years after I'd been on the grand jury. And so I did apply, and I had some idea about their issue, their problems. And I had some idea about their finances and their reserve policies, which is, for special district, that's a big deal, having a strong reserve policy. And, we just really wasn't any of those things. Some of the reserves had to be spent down, but then you had to balance how much you save versus how much you spend. So all of those things were easy to fix, but what was not as easy to fix was the governance. And so that has now completely changed, and we're functioning now as a board, just so well. So I'm very proud of that. But if I didn't believe in special districts, I would not have even done that. And I actually think in some ways the special districts play an important role, because I've seen how the cities, and I go back to the grand jury report that my grand jury wrote about pensions, for example, and that issue keeps creeping up. And this was before PEPRA, so this was well before 2012, 2013, right? So we're talking about the classic structure, right? And so anyway, but the point is like when you're looking at things like that, you see how cities manage their money too, right? And they have different sources. The fire district is, primarily, well, all of our money really comes from property taxes. The Harbor District has a combination of enterprise and property taxes. So we have tenants, like if you go to Pillar Point Harbor, and you should go because the catch, Joanne, or the catch is now open. So that whole
right,
tenant
yes,
row
it was
is
open
open
again,
now, right? And we have like the charter boat. So there's a different source of income but I think it's 65% still of our revenues come from property taxes. You really have to manage that. But at the end of the day, I think that we're really focused on core services, and that, like for the fire district, for example, is so essential, right? That I think you can see the consolidation in the fire service, where they're trying to make sure they have enough money. And, I think if the cities had been able, if they only handled their own fire department, they would not be able to afford it. And I mean, thankfully, the Menlo Park Fire Protection District is over 100 years old. And so we were able to include, the wealthiest zip code in America, also with, an area that is not, is socioeconomically challenged, like East Palo Alto and North Fair Oaks, but at least they get quality fire service. And I don't think that and I'm not saying that they would or wouldn't, but I think that cities, if they don't manage their money well, those core services are not gonna be there. And that's why you're seeing like with Belmont, Foster City, San Mateo, their fire
There's a lot of
service.
mergers, yeah.
Yeah, and
Hillsborough,
well, but they're not, none of them are technically official, like Woodside Fire Protection District, Menlo Park, Coastside Fire Protection District because I think there are only like 4 fire protection districts in San
Correct.
Mateo County, and Colma is, I think it's Colma is the other one, but they're small and they also have a volunteer force. But Coastside had a huge reckoning when they consolidated and they contracted with CAL FIRE. This was probably back in 2010, 2011, sometime at that point, and they're constantly looking at ways to provide good fiscal responsibility and financial management. It was just I was just in one of their meetings yesterday, and they, believe it or not, they are now taking out, I want to say, not the firefighters, but the administrative staff. We only have like maybe 8 of them out of CalPERS, and the board voted to do that. So it's just, they're constantly looking. I'm not, whether it's good or bad, it remains to be seen, but they're constantly looking at ways to save money so they can make sure that the service is there. So that's why I think the special districts are important. They do provide a service that maybe some cities can't afford.
Very good.
Any other
All right.
questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
If you have any questions, Kat knows how to reach me.
All right. Thank you.
I just want to be here for the next item
Very
to
good.
thank Lewis too.
All right, thank you.
Zero obligation to stick around for the rest of our meeting.
Okay.
No one's gonna feel offended.
Thanks, Matt.
Okay. Well, I know that if I was your position, I might feel like, oh, I gotta stay now, but you don't.
Go.
Okay, on to
I'll go
item
after
4B.
Lewis.
She's used to that,
I just wanted to make sure it was out there.
There you go.
All right, item 4B, recognizing prior year board president Louis Bella for his service. So I actually want to know, how many of these do you have?
I have to build another wall.
I'm thinking that we might want to go with something smaller in the future. Like, if you stack them all up, like, how big of a wall would it take?
I never got one of those,
You got, well, something, I didn't, like, every year we get something.
but it wasn't that.
It wasn't this, you never got the gavel before? Well, you do like using the gavel, so anyway, this is to thank you.
That's a gavel. That's a gavel.
This is to thank you for your prior year
Absolutely.
service. It's a great year.
Good, good.
You gotta hold it, not me, that's not my award.
There we go.
Awesome,
All right, thank you all, thank you very much. It was a good year.
it was a good year.
Can I make a public comment on that?
Absolutely, I should have gone.
No
through
worries. I just want to say that, Louis, thanks for your services. To everyone, thank you for your service. It's not always fun, but it is rewarding. And I know Lewis's background, and if there's ever a financial watchdog, it is you. And I thank you, because I think we provide as special districts, like I said, essential services, but you have to be able to fund them and you have to manage your money. And to me, the biggest responsibility that any elected representative has is to watch over tax dollars and public money. So thank you for your service and for all that you do. And I know it's not just on this, it's for other regional water bodies, like the Bosca board and all of that.
Yeah.
So thank you, Louis.
Thank you very much.
Very good. On to the consent agenda. Didn't have any changes, any comments? Or any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion and a second, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda is approved, hearings and appeals none. Item number 7, COP update none, on to regular business. Item AA, considering a resolution 2024-01 authorizing a whole bunch of stuff.
All right. Well, as you know, in 2022, we moved a good chunk of money, and that's about $9 million from our LAIF investment to our US Treasuries. And as we've been reporting all along, those are performing very well. And at the November meeting, it was Director Schmidt who specifically requested we look at, does it make sense to move any more money from LAIF to US Treasuries while we still have this kind of unique opportunity to earn additional interest there. So we looked at it, did a careful kind of assessment of our upcoming capital expenditures, brought that to the finance committee, and the finance committee agreed with our conclusion. So our recommendation is to move an additional 2.8 million from LAIF to US Treasuries. And so we worked with Wolf Hansen, who will present on kind of the holistic view they took, looking at our existing laddered portfolio with this new 2.8 and the recommendations based on that. So, Robert, Steve, you want to?
Yeah, I'll get us started. Hello, members of the board. It's nice to see you all today. You may remember I'm Rob Pankratz from Wolf Hansen. With me is Stephen Gortler, and we have Bud Levine, who you all know well, on Zoom today. So we'd like to talk about a couple things. Firstly, the district's reinvestment of the Treasury securities that's scheduled to mature at the end of this month. Secondly, a proposed plan that we worked on with the staff that is written out very, very eloquently in the staff report about investing additional funds in the program. And then the bad news, which is we are asking for a little bit more money and an amendment to our contract, which we'll cover at the later part of our presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to Stephen to talk about the slides and the proposal.
Sure, so we've got a little presentation.
Right after the resolution.
I'm gonna kind of loosely follow it as best I can. So as was mentioned, excuse me, right now, the district has approximately $4.5 million that's being considered for investing or reinvesting, kind of a both, actually. On the one hand, there's $2.8 million that the district has identified as potentially new money that you would add to your existing portfolio of securities and invest in treasuries. And then the balance between that 2.8 and the 4.5 million, that difference, you have a security that you currently own that you bought some time ago that's scheduled to mature at the end of January 31st. And so that's going to mature, you're going to get the money back. And so that money together with the $2.8 million, it totals about $4.5 million in the aggregate. And so the question is, should you invest or reinvest all or a portion of the $4.5 million? And if so, what would be a good strategy for the reinvestment? If you scroll down a little bit, this is a graph. We've shown this graph to you every time we're here, so you're probably familiar with it. Those bars, those are the treasury securities, 3 months, 6 month, 9 month, 12 month, and so forth. And then the round dots, the line there, that's the LAIF rate right now. As you can see, the LAIF rate has increased quite dramatically. It was like nothing a few years ago. And today it's up to slightly over 4%. 4.03% is the most recent rate as of 2 days ago or yesterday, which is quite a dramatic increase from like 0.1% to 4%. So that's the kind of the backdrop, which is where your money was previously invested. And then on the treasury side, the rates have been relatively high. They've begun to ease a little bit, but they're still about maybe
100 basis points or so higher than the LAIF rate. So there's still a good spread between the LAIF rate and the treasury rate. And most of our clients are still finding it's profitable for them to invest in treasury securities, in the 3, 6, 9, 12-month time frame, rather than take their money out and put it into LAIF. There may come a time where that's not the case, and you may want to take a closer look at LAIF, but at the moment, we haven't quite gotten to that point yet.
If I could just add one thing, we find it a little bit interesting that for the first time in a long time, LAIF has started to go down just a little bit. So we may have sort of seen the peak of where LAIF is going, but things can change. We have Bud Levine with us on the line. Bud, would you like to talk a little bit about some of the latest developments in the market over the last week or so?
Yeah, I'd be happy to, and it's nice to be here. It's always a very difficult subject to talk about where rates are going. I've been doing this for a long time, seeing the high of the market and the low of the market. I've never seen a market, however, like this that moves so rapidly and has such cross currents. So it makes it a little bit difficult to decide where things are going to go. But I think I've got a fairly reasonable idea of where things are going. Short-term interest rates, obviously the ones that are the 3-month, 6-month, 9-month, 12 months, and 24-month treasuries are a function of the Fed discount rate that's set by the Federal Reserve at their monthly or bi-monthly meetings. This past year, the Fed continued to raise that rate until the fourth quarter when they leveled off. They've not increased the rate since. The rates went from 450, the discount rate went from 450 in 2022, mid-2022, to 550 in 2023, and then leveled off in that fourth quarter. Now, economic data from the last quarter, particularly the last month of the year, has led to a common opinion in the marketplace that the Fed may start lowering, and as early as March of this year, to avoid a hard landing or recession. However, after all of that, and then by the way, if you've been following the stock market at all, I'm sure you probably realize that after the news came out in December, the market took off, and the S&P just this last week hit the all-time high of 4894. The Dow hit an all-time high over 38,000. The NASDAQ hit an all-time high of over 15,000, all on the premise that the Fed was going to dramatically lower rates here starting as early as March. However, with all that said, the last week has created some data from this from the reports, particularly on the growth of the economy and the inflation rate, that the Fed now instead of lowering in March, now the common opinion is that the Fed will start lowering in June. So I think the overall way to look at this is that the Fed is going to lower rates at some point when they feel that the economy may go into a recession, to try to avoid a recession. If they start lowering in June, they probably will lower slowly, just like they've done when they raised rates and then leveled off for a long time. When they dropped rates all the way down to almost zero and then leveled off for a long time. They will probably level off, be data-driven at that point. So it looks like a very good market for the treasuries for our program, in that they're at the level where they are now, and they probably will drop a little bit and then level off until the Fed really feels they have to lower more significantly. The interesting thing that's going on in our marketplace, however, on the flip side, is the long-term bond rates. Now, remember, the short rates are set by what the Fed does do with that discount rate. The long bond rates are set by what the market thinks is a reasonable return for investing in long-term bonds. And the market seems to think that there's probably a reasonable chance that we're going to have, if not a hard landing, maybe even a recession, but something that's not going to be so great down the next 15, 20 years. And therefore, those rates have come down pretty dramatically. Those rates are down 100 basis points over this last 6 or 7. So we're at almost a perfect storm for a district municipality, whereby for the investment of their funds, they're still getting a very good return on the treasuries better than LAIF. But if they have to borrow money at some point, where they need for a project or capital improvements or whatever, they're very accommodated and could possibly be extremely accommodated as we get near the end of the year. So that's my best guess at this particular point.
I would scroll down a couple of pages. There's a little table there. Yeah, next one after that, right? Okay, so this, and I don't know if it's possible for you to even see this. If you have a copy that you can see, it's more clear.
Yeah.
So right now, you currently own 5 treasury securities. That's what's in your portfolio. One of those securities is going to mature like next week on the 31st. So in essence, it's like you own 4 securities right now. And if you look on this table here, a little bit towards the right-hand side where it says cash flow from current portfolio, I don't know if you can see that on your copies.
Third from the right.
Third column from the right, cash flow from current portfolio. You can see the portfolio of securities that you currently own is going to generate cash flow of about $1.6 million on April 30th, another $1.6 million on May 30th, then $2.6 million on July 31st, and then $2.1 million on October 31st. So those 4 securities that you currently own are going to generate those 4 payments on those 4 dates. So that's kind of the liquidity that's going to be generated by your existing portfolio. So now we're talking about maybe you've got $4.5 million, $2.8 million of new money, plus the balance from that security that's going to mature next week. How might you apply that $4.5 million to new investments together with your existing portfolio of investments to produce a cash flow that might be suitable for the needs of the district? So we came up with sort of one proposal here. So on the left-hand side there, you can see one idea that we've come up with is take $1 million out of that $4.5 million and put it into a 3-month treasury security so that it comes due almost immediately in just 3 months on April 30th of 2024, together with the $1.6 million that you've currently got in your existing portfolio. So you'll end up on April 30th with $2.6 million in maturing treasury securities, which we think is good. 3 months from now, you've got lots of liquidity in case an emergency situation comes up or whatever you need the money, $2.6 million right out of the box. After that, then the existing portfolio would generate the $1.6 million, the $2.6 million, the 2.1. And then what we're suggesting to consider is take the other 3.5 million of that 4.5 million and put it in a 12-month security. Take advantage of the fact that you could lock in a rate of something in the neighborhood of about a 4.8%, which, as Bud was suggesting, that 4.8% for 12 months, that may not be around very long. We may be getting into a situation where those rates are not available if the market starts to seize. So maybe take advantage, put $3.5 million, take advantage of that 4.8% rate, kind of throw it into the back end, assuming that you don't need that money in the interim. And that way you'll maximize the earnings on that component. Of course, you could always sell securities if a situation should arise and you need cash right away, but that's not really the plan. The plan is, put together a ladder which produces liquidity every few months of a few $1 million, so that there's always money coming in the door. And then if you need it, you've got it. If you don't, you could consider reinvesting. So $1 million in a 3-month, $3.5 million in a 12-month. In the aggregate, that'll produce about $180,000 worth of interest earnings for the district over that 12-month period, which is a nice rate of return, probably close to about a 5%, maybe a little bit shy of a 5% rate of return, which, in today's market, that's good. It's not as high as it was, a month or two ago. Rates have come down a bit since then, but it's still pretty good. Definitely better than LAIF. LAIF's 4%. LAIF's not going to average 5% over the next 12 months. That's hard to conceive. So that's kind of what we've come up with. It's a starting point for the conversation. You may have other thoughts, but we figured we'd put that out there and give you something to chew on.
And the 4.84 is available now?
That's about, that rate moves around every day. One day it might be a little bit higher, another a little bit lower. If you were to go forward with something along these lines, it would take us probably another week or so to put everything in place And so the market might move between now and then. But as of today, a rate of 4.8% approximately is available. We did a bid for another client today, just literally today. And it was a 12-month treasury bill maturing in January of 2025. They got a 4.82% on that particular transaction. I think that's probably reflective of the market today.
We also priced earlier this week a 9-month treasury security for another client, and they received a yield of 5.04.
I honestly believe that these rates will kind of vary only a few basis points between now and the next few weeks. There's no Fed activity until March, and most of the economic data that's going to be relevant for the next week to 10 days is already out. I think the last one was today. Tomorrow actually will be last with the unemployment report. And then there won't be any significant data to make a dramatic move. So I think you can pretty well count that these levels will be within a few basis points of one another of where they'll be once we go to market. The interesting thing is on these last couple of deals that we did where we got so many bids, right, Rob? Didn't we get like on the one we did before?
We got 11 bids on the last security we priced.
Yeah, normally we get 2 or 3 bids, but 11 entities were anxious to buy, so to sell, I mean, so.
Any questions?
I'm curious what the finance committee, their comments, looks great to me, but let's hear from the finance committee. Kirk?
They're staring at each other.
Well, I said my piece, and I think it's a good idea, but knowing that in March, the Fed may meet and may not, they probably won't do anything, so. And any return these days when you can get, anything above 4.5% is good.
Yeah, so we're putting a big chunk into a 1-year note, rather 1-year treasury rather than laddering it in and upping our quarterly values or something like that. So it's a reasonable way to go. And we don't really need the money in the short term.
Yeah.
The question is, do we believe that these 3-month notes are going to continue to be higher than the 12-month that we're buying?
So I actually did have a question on that. If you could just go back to the chart. The one before that one. So the last couple of months, it looks like all 3 bars were working towards coming closer together, but now they're all working on separating, like the 12-month in particular.
Yeah.
And the recommendation is to invest it into a 12-month note, which I'm assuming locks it in. But it seems to me like something's changing there. Like the rate of the separation is not only bigger, but it's accelerating. And I'm wondering if you guys can sort of comment on why.
Yeah, absolutely. We can speak to that. So as Bud mentioned earlier, the shortest term rates are directly driven from Fed action. And the longer term rates, sort of starting at the 1 year and going out further, are driven by the market. So as the market anticipates the Fed to cut rates, those rates have been going down slightly. The 3-month rate, for example, is so tied to the federal funds rate that rate doesn't move as much until actual Fed action takes place.
Okay, so basically this is the bonds, or not, they're hedging against the March reduction in the Fed rate now by dropping at a faster rate. And so if we lock in now, we're still above late for 12, whereas, and I'm gonna extrapolate, the reason you're not recommending investing in the 6-month, for example, is because in 6 months, we might have a 6-month that's less than late, potentially.
I wouldn't necessarily say it's less than LAIF, but it would be less than what is available to lock in right now.
Right, but if we're trying to beat LAIF, right now the 6-month is greater than 12, and it's also greater than LAIF, right? So I think why not 2 successive rounds of 6 months?
There's something something very important you need to keep in mind. LAIF does this not operate in a vacuum. They're actively daily buying millions, if not billions of dollars worth of treasuries, just like you're doing. Only they're buying all the, a lot of times they're buying the longer ones to hedge positions of where for liquidity purposes. So their rate, as the rates start coming down on the treasuries, where we would be getting a little bit less on the treasuries, their rate will start going down even more dramatically, like it did last time. Just like it starts going up more dramatically in the middle of our last year. So, but that's where having every 3 months when you have something mature, you're going to be able to, we'll be able to take a look at and compare LAIF, what LAIF's doing, what it looks like it's going to do, and where the treasury market is in 3 months and then in 6 months. But,
Right, and I guess to that point though,
Right.
I mean, I guess the question that I'm asking is, I'm not necessarily comparing it to LAIF, but if I'm looking at a 12-month versus a 6-month and then reinvestment for another 6,
Right.
it's going in for the first 6 at a higher rate. B, I'm more liquid because I'm able to pull it out in 6 and decide to reinvest. Where's the downside in something like
Yeah,
that?
there's no downside. That's absolutely true. And if the district wants to invest in a 6-month treasury security, that is a great investment. The structure that we put together here in connections with our conversations with staff were more based on what we understood to be the district's cash flow needs,
Okay.
rather than the district's desire to buy the highest yielding securities regardless of maturity date.
One idea to make it more complicated, if I could, why don't you take the 3.5 and split it in half in the 6 and half in the 12. At the end of 6 months, buy another 6, and then we get to find out which was the best, which was the better.
I like that.
And that makes
up the difference.
Except for the fact, it almost sounds like a bet. I'm not sure that's what we're supposed to be doing here.
To that issue, let me point out a couple of statistics that you might find interesting. Every week, CNBC and the other economic media people do a poll of almost every economic expert that they can find, and they get their estimate of when they think the Fed is going to lower. In December, 78% of those polled, and there were thousands of them that were polled, thought that the Fed would lower in March. This morning, that 78% has dropped to 48%. So there's still 48% of the experts, so-called, that think it's going to lower in March, but there's now 52% that think it's going to be June or later. So there's no really absolute right or wrong here. There's a little bit of a gamble factor. It's just that the trend seems to be that the rates are going to be lower, and that's why we were recommending the 1 year, because I think that's going to look awfully good in 6 months, that you have, in the 480s or 490s locked in. However, the difference is going to be that great. If it's more of a comfort to have the 6 month for part of the money, absolutely, that would be totally fine. And if there's a difference, it's not going to be huge.
Well, and I don't consider myself someone that is discerning enough in the financial elements of this. I'm an engineer. I was just looking at charts and data going, I'm not sure I understand it.
Sure.
And then when you add in the fact that we would be more liquid if we needed the money, the more liquid money is invested at a higher rate, that kind of made sense. But that was about, that stretched my financial wisdom to the max.
Also, if you put half of it into the 6 month and you earn the 5, whatever percentage rate that is, then you don't need to make the whole 480 for the next 6 months, because you've already booked,
5.
whatever it was.
Yeah.
So even if rates go down a little bit, you might still be, equally well off or perhaps better off.
But by the way, it was a very sophisticated question. So that was good. That was a good question. That's way.
I'm just good at charts, that's all.
So I was gonna say that, the term gamble came up a couple of times, but really, like, these are very safe investments. So it's not a gamble. It's really, we're looking at trying to guess and balance opportunity cost. And so there's no wrong answer.
I mean, I guess my 2 cents on this is I would rather split it like we did before. That was what was particularly attractive about the last go around, is it was 3 months on the cycle and we weren't doing with early withdrawals and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure, I think I'm going to assume that the early withdrawal penalties are not at bad, and whatever bad means in any of these. But if we did all of it, half of it at 6, half of it at 12.
Emergency, you mean?
Yeah.
And I'd like to add to that, I don't like to use the word penalty if you have to liquidate. If the trend continues and rates start to go down as the Fed cuts, you'll actually be able to liquidate those securities at a profit if you needed to.
Exactly. The trend will be in your favor under that scenario. If you needed the money early, more than likely you're going to be getting a higher amount of return because the value of that 6-month security will go up.
Yeah, but 6 months is a short term anyway, yeah.
And since you love a chart, so the chart on page 13, kind of lays out the ladder and when things, would come to maturity, with the proposed 1 and 3.5 million. And you can see that it's still very well laddered. We still, you know, are having quite a bit of liquidity here. Yeah, page 13 within the staff report.
Got it.
And while everyone's looking at that chart, I'd just like to say, this is a very cool way to visualize this data, and we hope you're not offended if we borrow this idea in some of our materials going
It'll
forward.
cost them something,
because
It costs you, yeah.
it's very nice.
That might be on that.
But I think
Well, they were
they're quite generous, so.
Yeah, I'd like to add my 2 cents on this. That is a wonderful staff report. We see an awful lot of staff reports. And this was well put together and it really did our job for us almost in doing it. Excellent job.
Thank you.
Well, I think splitting the baby is a classic governmental.
Solomon has spoken.
It's thousands of years old.
King Solomon has spoken, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm all in favor of that. And in general, this is all great.
I think
It's
it's
all
great.
good, yeah.
So yeah, very happy with it.
And I'm not disagreeing with the financial committee's recommendation either. I was just a
No.
question that I had, and it was like, hey, this was.
It was not this well to us. This is a better presentation.
Well, we didn't have Wolf Hanson's recommendation at that
Yeah.
point, so it was mostly about.
Yeah, yeah.
So what's the will of the board in terms of the structure?
Given the size of the differential between the 6-month and the 12-month, it makes some sense to split it. It's not gonna make a huge difference, and it's not gonna give us a whole lot more expenses
Yeah.
associated with it.
It's whatever he said.
Right.
And I don't think we need to change the resolution.
I don't-
It's just
I don't-
investment
I-
treasury.
So the only thing I'm wondering, if we do say in the first action item, we do say not to exceed 1 year, for the initial,
I think that's consistent.
yeah, so it still would be not to
So-
exceed 1 year if you did 6
So we're
months,
still
if you
within-
did a mix. And then the direction is to split it 50/50.
Yeah, staff has heard that. Don't need to put it in.
Yep.
So,
Okay, so this is a resolution. If we're all sort of generally in agreement.
There was one more slide that I think we'll have
Oh,
to,
sorry.
we'll have to add on their fees.
Yeah, I'd like
Oh,
to,
I was trying to skip the bad news.
you can just vote on it. We're perfectly okay.
Fair enough. Good response. That was good. I appreciate that.
But yeah.
So on slide 22,
Is that
which
this
I
slide?
believe is just one before that. We have a sort of a new proposed fee arrangement, and I'd like to give a little bit of background on that and explain what our current fee situation is. So a little bit of backstory, when the district signed up for this program, you were the second Wolf Hanson client to join the program. Now, Stephen had a number of clients before he joined our firm that was participating in sort of a variation of the program. So it was tested out, but when the district signed up, we had not yet sort of established a uniform, comprehensive fee schedule that would work for all parties. And we have since developed that fee schedule, and so far it has been well received by all of our clients. And we either now or eventually would like to transition the district to our new standard fee schedule. But at the same time, we want to sort of acknowledge that you guys were an early adopter of our program and give you guys an extra benefit for that because we appreciate the relationship. So as shown on the screen, we sort of have 2 different proposals on a new fee structure. The first option is certainly our preferred option, and it is a little bit more complicated. But the first option is basically to either amend or replace Addendum B to our contract, which is the portion of our contract that covers this program, to coincide with our standard fee schedule, which is shown on the next page, but let's stay on this slide for a moment. So our current Addendum B has a termination date of December 31st of 2024, so the end of this year. And the way that it was set up is that it provided for a one-time setup fee of $10,000, which the district paid. It also provided for quarterly fees of $1,250 per quarter. What Addendum B did not do is outline how we would treat additional principal investments into the program, which is important for us because it's additional administrative work. There's additional liability that we take on. So it is important that we charge for additional principal investments. Now, that does not count interest charges that are reinvested, just new money that's put into the program. So our standard fee schedule is a little bit different. The way our standard fee schedule works is there is an increased one-time setup fee, but the district would not be subject to that fee. You've already paid a setup fee, so that's sort of null and void. The second fee is a quarterly fee, like our current quarterly fee, but instead of being a flat fee, it is a formulaic fee, and it's based on the principal amount of funds invested, not including any interest earnings that are subsequently reinvested. And that's a slightly higher fee, which I'll get to in a moment. And then the third fee is a formulaic fee for additional principal investments that take place after the initial setup of the portfolio. So if the district agrees to go with option one, what we're willing to do is to waive any additional fees that come because of new principal investments in exchange for the district paying a higher quarterly fee. And so based on the amount of principal funds you have invested, which in this slide, we assumed the 2.8 million in new investments would be approved, that would increase our quarterly fee to $2,344 from where it currently is now, which is $1,250. So that is sort of our preferred proposal. There is a second option as well, and the second option is to continue going forward with Addendum B through the end of its termination date at the end of this year. At the end of this year, then, to renew our contract, we would require the district to sign up based on our comprehensive fee schedule. And then for the new principal investment that it sounds like you guys are planning to approve today, we would negotiate a one-time fee for that. That's fair for all parties. And the fee that we would propose for that is $4,375. That is also the total of additional fees that would be charged under option one. So from a dollar standpoint, it's the same thing. It's really just two different ways that we can sort of structure the change in this contract. So that's our new fee proposal, and we're happy to answer any questions about that and discuss.
Is there any recommendation from staff?
It sounds like the amount would be the same either way, and so it's just more straightforward, I think, to go with option one, so that's what we're recommending.
And the variable components apply on the principal. So if we were to decide up the principal, we would be paying potentially more fees.
That's correct.
I don't know that we're planning on that at the moment.
Yeah, I know.
We're doing that now.
Yeah, I don't think we have any
This
more
would be post this investment
that would be
discussion.
comfortable
Right?
with.
Yeah.
And that formula is shown on the following slide if you're curious.
Any comments from the board?
So one question, maybe you covered this, it says for option two, in December 2024, convert to standard fee schedule. Is that also true for option one?
Well, so option one, you are converting to the standard fee schedule,
okay.
except we're gonna make an exception for you where we will not charge you any one-time fees for new principal investments for the remaining term of the contract.
Very generous and a good deal for us, so.
I have no strong opinion.
I
Go with
So
staff.
the quarterly fees are basically almost doubling, right?
There.
Do we get to drag them out to the board meetings quarterly?
Well,
I mean, it's an honest question.
well, they do prepare a quarterly report, so,
If you would like us to show up and present the reinvestment report on a quarterly basis,
No,
one
no,
member from our team
it's sort
can
of
do
being
that.
tongue in cheek, thank you.
so
If
far,
it's more like for $1,000, can we drag them like, or virtually or something like that?
well, and so what we
Speaking of
do get,
tongue-in-cheek, I am still struggling with the wolf and Hanson, and we have a GM who is wolfing. There's too many wolves. You know, is this a conflict of interest here? There's too many
Sure
wolves
hope
in the,
not.
in the den
And
here.
Hanson Bridget too. to make
Oh,
it-
man.
And Hanson,
Wow, you know what? The wool
It's a
has-
conspiracy.
The wool has finally been lifted.
I know,
Jeez.
see?
Yeah, good job,
Finally.
Louis.
but what we do get, I mean, so what you don't see is, you know, they do prepare the quarterly report, and every time, which you do see that, but every time one of these maturities comes up, we have a meeting, sometimes 2 meetings to discuss and make recommendations, and then, of course, we report out what we do to you. So they are involved, and, you know, they're, you know, wonderfully responsive. Anytime we have a question, anything comes up, like, you know, they're there, and that's what we're getting for quarterly fees, and you know, in my opinion. they're very
My personal
reasonable.
preference would be, and I don't have a strong opinion, I sort of would fit, is the quarterly option for the services we're getting, and we pay them along the way. That's mostly that's the model that I'm familiar with, is like, I provide a service, I get paid. I'm not familiar with I get a one-time fee and I provide service. But if others are comfortable with that.
It's option one.
And, you know, we are not expecting to continue to do this forever. It's strictly while the feds are keeping the short-term rates high to slow down the economy,
All the facts,
it
we're
becomes,
not sure what they're gonna do next.
so we don't know what's going to happen in the long term, and it may be that in 2 years, we're going to be back to the late fraud recession.
Yeah, and yeah, I know I haven't walked through the whole resolution, what it does, but one of the things it does, right, so it extends their contract 2 years, and it also clarifies and extends direction for the board, for staff to continually reevaluate and reinvest, you know, after those 2 years, to the extent it makes sense. At some point, it won't.
Now, does the standard fee schedule actually change as we draw money out of this process?
Yes,
So that $4,000 a quarter would go down as we have the gross
yes, under our
asset
standard
value
fee
going
schedule,
down.
it would go down.
As we use the money, or we no longer, or transferring back to Leif, so those numbers would go down at the same sort of
Yes, they would.
percentage rate. Okay.
And Kat briefly talked about extending our contract. The contract, either now or in a different option, it is cancelable on the part of the district at any time with no penalties.
Oh, so we could just sell off all of those bonds and take the money and run.
Absolutely. You could approve the resolution today, and tomorrow you could cancel our contract and sell the securities in your portfolio if you so
Right.
chose.
Okay.
All right. So I guess we need a motion with a slight spin of option 1 or option 2.
Yeah.
Is that how we handle that?
I think we wrote it to cover option 1.
Option 1, is that the way it's written?
Yeah.
So they need a motion
Direction
on
on
the
page.
resolution, the way it has been proposed.
Yeah.
So I'll move to consider resolution 2024-01.
I'll second.
Okay, motion in a second, roll call vote.
Director Bella,
Yes.
Director Schmidt,
Yes.
Director Wheeler,
Yes.
President Duca.
Yes. Excellent.
Motion
Thank you for the
passes.
presentation.
Thank you for the sandwich.
It's coming out of your feet.
That's all you
That's
gotta
a fair
get.
Okay, item 8B, direction regarding potential digital billboard partnership. Gentlemen,
Thank you all.
good night, gentlemen.
Have a good
Yeah,
evening.
you also feel no obligation to stay. Not that you do, but
Thank you, bud.
thank
Unless you're
you.
really into billboards.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is another item that we brought to the finance committee. So, you know, I think I mentioned earlier on in a board meeting that, you know, in context of looking at all of our upcoming, capital costs, including that for, the Dairy Lane building. We identified this as a potential source of new revenue for the district, and I had initially reached out to Clear Channel. Clear Channel is one of the companies that operates digital billboards in our area, and specifically operates one, for the city of Belmont and two for the city of San Carlos, that I know I drive by all the time, and, as far as billboards go, I think looks, nice compared to some alternatives. So I reached out to them and said, hey, is it even possible to put a billboard at Dairy Lane? And if so, what kind of money could it generate for us? And so our contact there, Sarah Fishlater, said, yes, it's quite feasible, in terms of, I think the district had looked at it previously, and there were some different conditions that, regarding the proximity to overpasses that would have made it challenging at that point. That same barrier doesn't exist now. There is another challenge, regarding the city of Belmont's ordinances, which I'll cover. But basically, they were thrilled that we reached out. And so, in here in the staff report, we, outlined some considerations. Could be constructed, owned, operated entirely by Clear Channel. There's no ongoing, management of the billboard itself by us. It's just on a property with a ground lease. They do all the permitting, design, etc. It would be so it could either be the same size as the ones that you see in Belmont and San Carlos, or it could be a bit bigger. The benefit of having a bigger sign is it's more attractive to advertisers. Advertisers are asking for this 20 by 60 rather than this 14 by 48 foot emit signs. There would have to be a bit of, there would have to be a CEQA review process, so that is a consideration. So then there's the city of Belmont sign regulation. So either it would need to be waived by the city of Belmont for us as another, public entity, or it would need to be revised, because the way it's currently written, as I understand it, is it allows for the exchange of existing billboards to be traded out in place of the new one, and there just aren't any opportunities either owned by Clear Channel or any of the competitors to allow that exchange to happen. Clear Channel is very willing to help engage the city, using their consultants to, devise an ordinance, to revise an ordinance or a waiver, whatever is feasible. And certainly, depending on direction, we could reach out directly to the city to start that conversation even rather than Clear Channel. And so in here, these bullets here are, words, directly from Ms. Fishlater, of how she would see the process following. So, ideally, the first step we as a district would agree to certain cap and payments and, the structure of the deal. And it could be an informal agreement on writing. And if we have those terms, then they would proceed to engage the city of Belmont. So, in the packet, I provide examples of similar billboards in the area. There's Belmont and San Carlos. There's also one in here, which is actually not digital, but the East Bay Mud also has one that's not digital, but they're working to convert to digital. The numbers she gave us is, and this was just off the cuff, probably on a low estimate as you would in this case. It could generate revenues for us of $100,000 to $250,000 per year. In here are some examples of agreement structures from the city of Belmont, which was, so this is from their 2015 staff report, so think in terms of $2015. So their deal, they get a minimum payment of $150,000 per year, with an annual adjustment of 3% for 30 years. So the minimum payment is 150, or it's 30% of the gross advertising revenue. So that's the floor they get, is 150, which they estimated at that point to be about $7.2 million in 2015 dollars. City of San Carlos is a similar kind of structured deal where it's $150,000 floor or 32% share of the gross revenue. With kind of a different escalation structure here. And that deal was, that was the more recent one in 2022. So that one, sorry, that deals with Orion Outdoor Media. City of St. Carlos has quite a few billboards. They seem very pro billboard, so there's quite a few deals that we could review, and get them as examples. So that's the benefit of certainly, you know, $250,000 a year could, itself is obviously a lot of money, or if you look at it in terms of what debt service is, it could be, you know, on the order of $4 million worth of financing for, you know, other projects. Being completely transparent, I know the questions come up regarding power use. We would pay the power bill. It would be a completely different, you know, PG&E service to it. It would all be paid by Clear Channel, but they use on the order of 2,000 to 3,000 kilowatt hours per month. They do obviously for their own reasons, so they work to minimize that energy usage. The billboard actually dims at night. It doesn't need to be as bright at night. And it actually, you know, dims with cloudy weather, etc. So, but it does use energy. And then also, you know, I certainly have questions being located next to the mobile home park. What would there be in terms of light impacts? You don't want to be blasting light at neighbors, you know, in the middle of the night. And so she gave us this example of a light directionality analysis that can be done, and you know, these things can be quite fine-tuned to you know, demonstrate that it's not going to negatively affect the residents. So at, you know, at this stage, we've done, you know, a fair bit of kind of fact gathering. And so, you know, looking to the board to give us direction to, you know, do we want to reach out to Clear Channel and with, you know, Julie's help, work on, you know, coming and to, you know, some terms that we could bring to the board to consider, or, you know, any alternative. Certainly there are other companies other than Clear Channel. I personally think Clear Channel billboards, at least around here, are the more attractive ones. They're certainly a big company with a lot of resources. So that's why we initially approached them. But so, and I'm sure there'll be a little bit of discussion. And actually, if I could add, Kathy did, since she couldn't be here tonight, she did send me a couple notes that she's very supportive of the billboard. She thinks it's a great source of revenue. And when she was on council, she was a part of the, you know, the 20 billboard that they did. And then her other, as for the, my other observation is, since we are going to have to rebuild potentially the old office building, any additional revenue, any CO funds would be helpful.
Any questions?
On the number of free advertising, what are we talking about?
It's whatever we negotiate. And I know it's in these staff reports, but it's, you know, on the order of something like 6 advertisements or something a year. So that's something we could use for, you know, conservation and, you know, drop messaging if we need that. And we use it for whatever we want, but I think that's the most likely use we would have.
And something that runs 24/7 and is cycling 6 things through and tries to actually mean.
So it's basically a slideshow, right?
Right.
So it's one of those slides. So you're,
For a duration, for a month, for a week, for a day?
it's whatever we negotiate.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, and that's,
not only, what I was getting at is to, at what time in the day would, let's say, our slide show, because if it shows at 1 o'clock in the morning, I don't want that kind of advertising. I don't care if they do it every day at 1 o'clock in the morning, but, you know, at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, yeah, I would want that, or 9 o'clock in the morning, or 8:30, yeah. So,
yeah,
you know, when you negotiate, make sure that, you know, we're talking something that's going to benefit us.
Yeah.
And if they're gonna be using that kind of energy, maybe they should start putting some notices about energy conservations too.
Well, that's something we actually do, is during the power safety shutoffs, this came up in our conversation, right? The state reached out to them and said, can you turn off all your billboards? And they said, I don't really want to, but what we can do is statewide, put up messages telling everyone else to conserve.
Exactly.
And so they did,
Yeah, because they're reaching millions
How
of people.
ironic.
but they're, they're reducing.
Question is,
They're
how did that
advertising.
affect?
They got the message out there. They also, a lot of, the cities explicitly put into their contracts, that they'll, all kind of amber alerts and whatnot will also be posted. And there's
Right.
also, I had questions about just kind of the type of material that goes up there, and you can put, in your agreement, restrictions on whether, cannabis advertising, and certainly we care about, things like political campaigns and all of that, prohibit certain things like that. They did say if you want to prohibit alcohol ads, that it's about a 10% reduction in profit. But these are individual, things that we can consider and put in there.
Well, I think the issue is when to start this, because we need to coordinate it with the Dairy Lane decisions. And there's going to be a lot of discussion about this as it goes forward. Because if we don't know what we're doing with Dairy Lane, it's hard to tell what we're going to do about a billboard. So I'm not sure it's, we're gonna call it top priority, but it's worthwhile to follow up with. It sounds like it's worthwhile to find out what we can get for it.
And it will be a process, we will have to work with the city, because currently we can't. And part of the discussion, if we wanted to, for example, put it out to RFP to all billboard companies, but we can't feasibly do that right now because the ordinance doesn't allow for it, so.
Right. And we don't know what the city's going to ask for.
Question and a comment. I assume we would be doing CEQA?
Yes,
So,
yeah,
Yeah.
I believe. we're
Subject to
leading
secret review,
in this
yeah.
case.
And then we're leading that CEQA.
I think so.
What about the city of Belmont's ordinance change? That too?
Well, the way I envision it is staff would initially approach the city and see if they would, be interested in doing a waiver directly for us. And if not, then, Clear Channel, their consultants, and they have consultants who do this kind of thing.
Is there any precedent? We can't be the first place that's a local agency asking another agency for a waiver on a billboard.
So that precedent, I don't know about specifically, but as far as the ordinance change, which you said is what's typically done, is they revise the ordinance, and everyone had this kind of like exchange ordinances to, okay, in select cases, they'll allow it, but the city will get a one-time payment, or maybe it's an ongoing payment, but so the city also financially benefits from the deal as
Right,
well.
no, I'm familiar with the process of changing an ordinance. More along the lines of like, do people normally change the ordinance, or do land use authorities normally waive that requirement for other agencies within their jurisdiction?
I don't know the answer. They do have a really restrictive ordinance.
Okay.
It's not typical, but they're like basically, you can't have any billboards.
Yeah.
You don't see that often, which then they wait for themselves.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
I did look just now at their contract that they have. And when it comes to their ads, it's for a period of 2 weeks. And they can ask for the requested times for it to go. And the Clear Channel will use this typical, best, reasonable efforts to accommodate that time schedule. So they really agree to it in their contract.
But one thing, if you've noticed that kind of weird skinny arm that comes off of billboards, what that is actually is a camera that takes photos to demonstrate to the advertisers when and that their advertisements are running.
interesting.
Yeah.
Never knew
Because
that.
it has a time clock to it too.
Let's get them up to that.
Yeah, I don't know who mentioned it, but if the sign were to go up before we start construction, I mean, could this sign be anywhere in the way of a tower crane operating? Could it hinder the project, our project?
That's certainly consideration, and, in our discussions with Clear Channel, we obviously told them, like, we're planning on this project, and so, it would be an ongoing part of the design and planning process of what timing makes sense. Right now, we don't have the timing on Dairy Lane, so, we can't, but, but it's
I am
certainly
thinking that
consideration.
if this were to move forward and with the city of Belmont and all of that, I mean, they would want to put it up as quickly, they will put it up before we even start playing in the dirt over there, to do whatever. So, which means that they could already be in our way, in the way of the contractor to do what we need to do there. I mean,
But until we actually have a site plan for what we're gonna do with Dairy Lane, it's hard to tell what the restrictions
But
would be.
regardless,
Yeah.
I mean, a contractor might say to you, no matter which way you're going to slice this, if you have that tower and that thing, that's going to
Make it more
prevent me
difficult.
from posting my tower crane where I want to do it, and that's kind of the fear that I have, that we approve something and then we find out that it's going to be costing us a lot of waste time and.
I think we can, if we're gonna approve this in concept, we can start the process. And then we can work out the spacing and the location and all that kind of stuff and the final sequencing of work. That's just sequencing as a contractual requirement, like that can be a future problem. In other words, once we design the Dairy Lane building, we can do a constructability review and make sure that we can build them both one way or the other. But, I mean, honestly, I don't think it's a big deal. Stuff I've built, we'll be able to work our way around it, unless we're going up 5 stories. I'm not exactly sure what kind of,
Might not need a tower.
might not need a tower.
Well, these towers are like 40 feet. then it's-
They'll need a tower crane, we will.
Yes. Well, they can use a regular crane because they don't need that much reach,
Yeah.
but the whole thing is like 60 feet tall and it would be, the bottom of the sign is gonna be above our current warehouse roof. So, but that doesn't mean it won't get in the way if we start doing a lot of work in the back.
Yeah, I mean, I think the point is well taken, that we need to sequence the work.
Yeah.
That's sort of the point. And make sure that one is not obstructive to the other.
Matt, I have some more.
Yeah, sorry, I thought you were done, bro.
No.
Go.
Me,
I mean, that was the question. You have a comment now.
yes.
Okay, go.
Yes. Well, I do want to hear a little bit more about your opinion, but, because I have very deep misgivings about billboards, which I've mentioned to Kat, and I think I mentioned in a previous meeting. So it's helpful for me to understand where the rest of the board is, to see how much, because if the rest of the board thinks should go ahead, I'm not gonna take too much people's time. I've been opposing billboards for literally 30 years. When I lived in Alaska, there was this governor who hated the environment, wanted to destroy everything. And he said, we shouldn't have billboards. Billboards are blight on the landscape. I thought that was pretty crazy that governor said that stuff. I wrote a letter to the editor about it back then, which they did not publish. So anyway, I see it falling in 3 categories, why there's significant problems. There's an aesthetic category, and I either agree or disagree on that. There's an environmental category. I can dive into that a little bit. And then finally, there's a safety category. So aesthetics, I don't know how much you want to talk about that. Environmental category, one thing I'd be interested in exploring, but I don't know if anyone else would be in environmental analysis, going beyond a traditional analysis that looks to see if you reduce the impacts to less than significant, and having an analysis that gets to 0, no impact on anything. And I suspect to do that would be really expensive and would remove the commercial value. So I don't know if they'd be interested in doing that or not. And then on the safety issue, actually, one other thing is I think I'm Two other things. First of all, I should say that, I see the advantage of 100,000 to 250,000 income stream with no obligation. That's attractive. And I want to applaud Kat for looking at that, pursuing that, looking into that. But there are these other concerns I brought up. I'm glad you looked into the mobile home thing. I bet all five of us want to make sure that impact goes to zero on the folks there. And same thing on safety. And I'm not necessarily going to trust anything Clear Channel has to say on safety issues. And I have a lot of trouble understanding how it's going to have zero distraction effect. And these are our drivers, our people that this is going by. So those are my concerns. And finally, I would say that this board makes decisions for staff, and then staff goes and does stuff. We as individual directors are not guided by the decision of the board. Any one of us can retain their opinion on things after a board has made a decision. And I will retain mine, including what happens in subsequent decisions, say by the city of Belmont.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that this isn't a slam dunk for me, not necessarily for all the same reasons. Maybe the energy one is probably the biggest one. And I don't know that we really need that. I mean, free money is nice. I don't know that we really need the money. You know, I mean, like, we are an enterprise fund, we can set our rates. $250,000 is nice, but it's $250,000 a year on a $20 million budget. How much of the needle? Yes, it can bond finance a lot. And then, you know, $250,000 is probably 0.5% increase in rates. Roughly. So, you know, is it this or is it 0.5% increase in rates? If we want to sustain revenue stream, you know, we can raise rates 0.5%. And I think that's kind of the question to me is, it's free money at the expense of something else on the freeway and additional energy consumption, all that kind of stuff. And I don't know that it's worth it, but, you know, I do think that the one nice thing about it is that we have the opportunity of at least exploring it and seeing if it can help with it might move the needle on an option that we can't otherwise afford on Dairy Lane. Like, if we were sitting there going, we need $4 million, we can't afford something, then to me, this is more attractive. The ability to bond $4 million is not necessarily that attractive for me. So I think it's worth exploring, but I just don't know how much farther we want to go with it. You know, I don't know, I'm 60, I'm like 55, 4, 50, 45 again, 64, 40 again, somewhere in that area. But, I mean, maybe Kat, you can, what would the next step actually be? Are we talking about signing a contract, or are we talking about further exploration discussions?
It would be further exploration discussions.
Okay.
Even if we come to kind of just general agreement on terms, we wouldn't be signing a contract at this stage. You know, and another option is to kind of just to defer a decision, and if it comes to a point where it really does move the needle down the line, we could then, you know, further pursue it. So, you know, that's an option.
Yeah, I have to admit, I'm not enthusiastic about billboards, and I don't really like the ones that are out there, but depending on what it actually looked like, and it'll be interesting to see what the visual impact of that would be on the bridge at Ralston or near Ralston. Who's going to be impacted by seeing it? And there aren't that many buildings over on the other side other than the hotels and a few odds and ends like that. So if it was facing in the other direction and everybody on the entire hill in Belmont could look down on the freeway and see that sitting there, it would be a different political decision for me. But
I'm assuming it would be worse. I'm not sure. Is that better or worse?
no, it would be worse.
Oh, okay, just making sure.
I used to have a view of the airport and you could see.
Oh, okay.
the
I
signs there.
just thought you might want them to see. I wasn't sure.
No, it's just sort of, okay, if it's really only visible from freeway,
Right.
it's like a lot of other areas along the freeway. You either have billboards or you have sound walls, which is worse, I don't know.
And you have
surprised.
some places have billboards above sound walls.
Well, I'm surprised they haven't started putting billboards on the sound walls, so
That's a good point.
that will follow you as you drive.
That's not distracting.
Right.
Well, at this point, billboards are there already. So as far as the landscape, it's already there. What I would like to see more of especially is the impact. The impact on our neighbors, the impact on the mobile home park. And those before I could make a decision. However, I am not gonna say that I'm opposed to it. As a matter of fact, I'd like a little bit more information because it's good money and the money that we need. As far as I'm concerned, it's money that we need, that we shouldn't leave it there. If the impact on the things that we talked about in the waiver and all that is cleared ahead of time. And the impact on our project as well, you know, so.
So I guess in
let's
summary,
move forward, you know?
the direction is to continue to consider, I'm making this up, so stop me if I get this wrong. Continue to consider, but the board has neither said yes nor no.
You could pursue discussions with Belmont and they may not be receptive at all to doing a waiver
Or they
or
want, they
amending
might
their
want $1 million
ordinance.
and, you know, for a one-time fee, and we're like, nah,
Yeah,
it's not gonna happen.
Well, Clear Channel may be willing to put that up.
Maybe,
not us.
never know.
I mean, they're gonna spend probably $1 million to build it. So,
Good? You feel perfectly directed?
We didn't talk about the easement. They're going to, they're gonna have an easement, right, for the.
It would be a ground lease. So it
ground
works
lease.
for the footprint. That's about an 8-foot round footprint for this thing. So that's how it works is, and so our revenue source is really the ground lease.
and they'd probably have a license, I imagine, to come on property
Mhm.
and maintain.
Correct.
Similar to our
we
cell
would have
towers.
to look at
Yeah,
what their
same size.
access requirements
Yeah.
would be when we're locating things for Dairy Lane.
Do these boards, do they normally have some kind of a generator? For loss of power, or
They have
something
their
can't be
own,
battery, I mean, it's too.
It's connected. I think they just go out.
I don't think I can.
yeah,
They're not essential facilities.
they'd have a hard time getting an air quality permit.
Yeah, no kidding.
So it'll be a solar generator.
If they wanted to buy solar power from us, and we could put more solar on the roof, yeah. But I think we're not gonna get enough panels to cover our own requirements.
So to clarify, should we approach the city of Belmont, or should we just kind of keep this back burner until things?
I mean, I think that we might as well move this forward to the point where we can make a better
Yeah.
decision on the impacts and on the terms of any deal with Beaumont. At least, again, I'm summarizing on behalf of what I think I heard tonight, so. The direction is continue to move forward without making any commitments.
I'm not gonna try and stop that. I'm just saying it's you three that wanna do that. Go ahead and do that, Kat, go ahead.
But the thing, Brian, is that if, let's say the city of Belmont really put a brick wall in front of us, I mean, that's it, it's dead in the water, we're not gonna be able to do anything. But if that door is kind of ajar, so, okay, fine, it have to be brought up again to this board again.
And although Director Jordan is not here, I'm sort of taking the voice of the collective forward, just to be clear.
Sorry.
And I know you didn't mean that, I just wanted to be clear about how I'm adjudicating on behalf of the board as president, if you will. Is that, I think that there's sort of, even if it's 55-45 and in favor and not opposed, all that kind of stuff, it's like, let's take it the next step, and then we withhold the right to make a future decision in the yea or nay.
All right.
And it might get to the point where like, yeah, we want to advance the CEQA document, and we get the CEQA document, we go, no. I mean, like, there's all kinds of checkpoint, exit points going forward, so, all right, good enough. This is how we make short meetings long, gentlemen. Let's see, item 8C.
I really gotta
Strategic plan.
start spacing mine out more. So I can nonstop talking. So the strategic plan, so based on the comments received at the special meeting, January 9th, we revised the document, so you have both a red line and a clean version. So the question is whether it's ready to approve or if you have any further revisions.
Any comments or changes, or were the changes satisfactory?
I think the changes captured what we talked about. I think I didn't see anything in here that was out of whack, other than the red line didn't like our mission statement.
Yeah, I saw that. Too. I wasn't sure what
But-
language it was.
Vision, yeah, what is
Yeah.
The text format didn't quite work when the red line
I wasn't
popped up.
feeling well.
Yeah.
I called in kind of sick to that meeting and I was like, I don't know what happened.
And it did actually did that for the preparation for the special meeting, and we caught it, fixed it there, but yeah,
Served
it
alcohol.
just
Well,
doesn't-
it looks fine in the final product.
yeah, it's one of the mysteries of Word. Literally, all I did was accept changes and it went away. So, and it doesn't look like this in Word, only when it's PDF. So
PDF, yeah,
it's a
sometimes.
mystery.
Yeah, personally, I think this is the best mission statement I've ever read.
I was gonna say, this makes perfect sense
You know
to
what?
me, so.
Could you read it for us, please?
It
You really want me to?
evokes the right emotion in me, right?
Yeah.
Another one that wanted to do the
Thinking
something,
comprehension.
which is I don't understand it, and I like it.
It does kind of make you happy though.
All right,
I did have one
go ahead,
thing.
Director Smith.
Page 58, that commercial industrial turf, the application long begun program and consideration of changing state law. I thought we were kind of saying they shouldn't get it anymore. Maybe that's what I was kind of saying anyway. So I don't know, did that reflect what we want?
So my intent with this wording is, so the state law, and I haven't spent enough time absorbing it myself. It doesn't ban all CII, there's some exceptions. And so it was more, let's look at that, but also, really understand the state law and see if there's if there's a reason to incentivize. Or, and this is another consideration, right? Even if, and the ban gets phased out over time, but even if, all businesses have to take out their lawn, there's a cost to that. And so, is that worth, and this is more important consideration later, but is that worth, or is there any value in helping to incentivize that so that it gets done sooner? Or they do it in accordance with the lawn begone program where they have to replace it with, X percentage of native landscaping and like hardscape. Or do we just or do they all just let it all go brown in a shelter, or they all put in pavement or, alternative? So, that just, kind of gave or allowed for more nuance and more consideration. This ban exists and you don't want to be spending money on something that doesn't make sense, but there's ways it could make sense.
Although I think it's kind of, what we have here is kind of murky. Which maybe that's okay right now. We'll look at this again in 6 months, is that right?
January, next January,
Oh,
to revise the
6 months.
strategic plan.
All right.
Yeah, I suppose that my.
But I think the
review-
intent is, that when you say with consideration, in other words, you're, that's a modifier on the CII long begone program. Like if I heard you correctly, if the state's banning it, we're not gonna incent, like, you can't water after 2025. We're not gonna, in the 24 pay for someone to get rid of their commercial, their turf. I think that's your intent.
Yes.
And as long as that's what the staff's interpretation is, that like, we don't wanna be incentivizing stuff that's gonna happen 3 months from now anyway, then we're probably okay.
I believe the first ban starts in 2027, but
I think
I'm
it's
not.
2027 too. I haven't
not positive.
internalized
So we
that.
have some time.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
So maybe it's like, yeah, we probably need to clarify that. But as long as staff understands the intent of what that, I agree. I mean, I don't think we want to be incentivizing something that's gonna change next week anyway. And giving someone free money at that point.
Yeah, okay, and especially 2027, we got time to.
Yeah.
Clear.
And there may be something even on the residential stuff that's going to change when the DWR actually finishes their regulation process. So we don't know what we're going to get forced into. But we'll reevaluate the replacement program and whether it should be funded as a conservation measure or not.
Good enough. This is, I guess we can do not a resolution, so we can just do we can just do a roll call. We can just do a voice vote. I guess, but you have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second,
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the 23-24 strategic plan, say aye.
I,
Opposed? Approved. Item 8D, select the date for special meeting.
So I did reach out to every district to hopefully expedite this. Louis is our world traveler and he's a bit of a challenge.
He's the one that's retired, I want to point out.
I'm the busiest of us
I
all.
am working harder than you
I'm
are.
not, that I'm not doubting, that I'm not doubting.
So based on the feedback, the best date appears to be Monday, February 26th. Which, you know, I had been hoping to do a little sooner, but that seems to be the best.
Yeah,
date that
and the
works.
27th, I am likely at a finance committee. I think I texted you that when I originally said I was okay, but it might be the 13th. It's up in the air. So if it was the 27th, I would just be iffy. It's a meeting I have to attend. But it's gonna be one of those Tuesdays.
Yeah, starting at 6 p.m. Which, well, I guess that's a question, right? So we normally start these at 6 p.m., but I know Director Schmidt, you have changed in your circumstances.
Well, it's Monday, you said?
Yeah.
I think that'll be okay.
Work from home day, Monday.
So we're all available Monday the 26th?
yes.
It's February, no?
2-hour meeting?
Hopefully. That's the goal.
Go. Yeah, we're all in agreement. Item 8E is receive Bosca update.
So what, the start of the meeting is what time?
6 p.m.
6 p.m. Okay.
And we'll have dinner.
Okay. So Bosca. Bosca. I met on January 18th. I have a few notes here. And last Thursday, it was the last meeting of the chair of Bosca, who was Gustav Larsen from Sunnyvale. Is he Sunnyvale? I think so, Sunnyvale. Sunnyvale council member. And he's not gonna be on Bosca anymore because I think, I'm not sure exactly, but I don't think he ran for council. So he's not a council member anymore.
But I thought, a question for you on that. I thought once you're appointed to Bosca, it's a 4-year appointment regardless of whether you're on council anymore. You don't vacate your Bosca position just because you vacate your council seat.
Correct.
Oh,
So
okay.
he has not been on.
He has not been on council.
He continued on his term on
okay.
Bosca, now
Okay.
the
Now
term
it's
is
over.
up,
I got
so he's not gonna be on Bosca.
I thought he didn't run in November or
No,
whatever. and then-
no,
okay.
this was the prior, so his replacement was there as a matter of fact. So, the city of Sunnyvale has already appointed a replacement for him. So, And as you probably know, the Bosca are starting to live stream the meetings, and it has been a big challenge. So the last meeting that we had last week was not live streamed, but we're still working on getting the whatever technical difficulties are to make it a live stream and to have the general public participate from virtually and also in person at the same time. So anyway, he highlighted he thanked everybody for the years, and he had a couple of highlights as to the changes that were made on the board and what happened during his term. In order that the board's meeting have been live at the time, so anybody who wanted to speak had to come there in person. And he reminded the board that Bosca's work is focused on its goal, obviously, to have a reliable supply of high quality water and fair price to 1.8 million residents. That's the kind of the reach of Bosca's decision, and 40,000 businesses. And the one thing that we kind of harped on is that he reminded the board of the special nature of the Bosca and the role as a board of members. And I'll talk a little bit about that later on that special nature. So Bosca is an independent special district formed by the state legislature 20 years ago through Assembly Bill 2058. And while the board members are appointed by the single agency like we are, within the Bosca region, Bosca board members, each of us is obligated, and this is where the special nature is, each one of us is obligated to represent the water interest of the entire Bosca region, not the singular interest of the appointing agency. As such, it is the legislature's requirement for each of us individually and as a board to consider policy decisions and actions in a manner that respects and represents the needs of the entire Bosca region. It has been very, very interesting this last year, maybe year and a half. We had a few new members, young members who were elected to their council or their district, and they were appointed on the Bosca. And all of a sudden, everybody is appointed for their district or for their city or for their needs. And I was the one that said, so wait a minute, so you're on the Bosca regional board, you don't speak for the city of XYZ or the district of ABC. This is for the common good. This is why we're here. If you want to do that, then you go to your region, to your area, because this is something a little bit bigger than that. And it's not easy for people to differentiate between when you're pulling for your district or for your city and when you're fighting, SFPUC, for example, or the State Water Board, or, at that level. So that was interesting, but hopefully the newer people will understand their role on Bosca. Then we had the election of the new chair, and the new chair is Tom Chamber. Tom Chamber from Westboro as the new chair. And what else do we have? And oh, by the way, they elected me as the vice chair. I don't know what they were thinking, but anyways. And then we had the report from Steve Ritchie, which Rena will talk about later on, so I will skip that. And let's see. The board adopted the recommended changes for the fiscal year plan, and the board was presented with a special report on the development of Bosca's long-term. This is important here. The CEO provided an oral report on the following 3 items: the plan schedule for the Tier 2 plan update for calendar year 2024, which I'm sure you're going to be talking about too, and the results of Bosca market rate comparison of consultants billing rate, and we had a long conversation on that, on the billing rate, especially on the legal, how much money is being spent on the attorneys. And also the third one was the Bay Delta plan update. Regarding the State Water Board cases, the CEO already provided a last minute update that it is not reflected on the slides. So the court issued an order today, it was at that day, the State Board cases indicated it needs more time to draft its ruling. And the court cited the complex subject matter, large number of claims, and apparently they were presented with a 700,000 page report. 700,000 page report. Which judge is going to read through that? Can you imagine?
Double-sided?
Believe.
That's what interns are for.
Oh my God. But it was large font.
No, yeah, double space.
So the court now has 90 days from today to issue its ruling to court and indicated expect its ruling to be before the deadline. Well, we shall see about that. So, and then we went to a budget planning session. So that was it. And the water managers, I'm sure you went into a little bit more detail, right?
Yeah, we covered some topics, but the biggest development. So I think I mentioned that, last February at the annual SFPC meeting, after the two big, rate hikes from SFPC, they projected for the next several years, I want to say 4 years, 0% increase in their rates. That's what they had charted. That's what they said. Had a lot of confidence. And I think it was at the November water managers meeting, Steve Ritchie said, well, it's gonna be a non-zero increase. And we were told, okay, you'll get your range letter. Usually they give, a letter that says it'll be, somewhere within this range. Soon, it's, any day now, next week. Finally, last week we got it. And so they're looking at, as of July 1st, a rate increase between 4.2 and 13.1%.
Yikes.
Oh, mackerel.
That's non-zero. So, it's 22 to 68% increase per CCI. So, we'll have to deal with it. Our pass-through, we had done a 2-year pass-through, Prop 218, so, I already reached out to John Davidson, and so he's on notice that we'll want to do another pass-through to cover
Then we
this.
have 2 billboards instead of 1.
Might be more than that.
So,
And, the thing that I remember is San Francisco did this once to us before, and it was also the second year out of a drought, as I recall, where their finances get all squirrely because they can't freaking project what their sales are gonna be, and they underestimate, and we get hosed on the rate side of it.
so there's gonna be a huge rebound, and there
It
is.
was, there is,
and there
it's
never-
exactly the same year, 1 year after a drought, we got hammered with a 30% rate increase. And we actually had an internal call this week in Palo Alto talking about this one. I said, our rate models in the future need to have a massive spike in rates with, if we're in the middle of a drought, assume somewhere out there is gonna be a 15% rate increase in San Francisco, because they're 2 for 2 in my career. Last one was 30, so they got a little bit better. But I'll tell you, the first range letter that came out that year was like 0 to 18, or 3 to 18. And it went back, and then the final one came out 30. So it was fluctuating up until mid-June last time. So let's hope to at least get it. So I wouldn't believe the 13 is a cap even.
Yeah,
And we just have to be, careful as to what that looks like.
the annual meeting is on, with SFUC is on the February 15th,
Yeah.
so it'll be interesting to see what they say
Yeah.
at that point.
Yeah.
We'll just keep you apprised and be prepared with the Prop 218
Yeah.
pass through.
Yeah.
To the extent we can. Otherwise, tier 2 negotiations continue. I think it was the 17th meeting workshop that we had. It feels like we're getting closer. We're coming to having something. It's hard to say because, the closer we come to, the consensus, then the couple of agencies that have outlier positions, then they're, starting to be more vocal and digging. So I'm gonna choose to be optimistic that we are on the right path and we'll totally get it done in the timeline presented.
I've played with that spreadsheet in the past, and those 2 outlier agencies are gonna be asleep at the wheel for that to actually happen. Or whatever they are. That's not an easy.
Yeah, it's has a challenge, and one of the bigger issues is surrounding the minimum purchase agreement too, so.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll see how it plays out, but we're engaged, and as, you know, the path that's marching down Mid-Peninsula is, you know, it's almost ridiculous, we're middle of everything, because, you know, all of our numbers middle, so it's almost laughable, the scenarios we're looking at now, how our number doesn't change, other agencies bouncing around, our number's just pretty darn
That's the
flat,
place
so
to
it's,
be.
you know, it's
Yeah,
in some ways good, in some ways
Mhm.
a challenge, because it's like, what's your opinion?
Yeah,
I don't have a reason to have a strong opinion, so
Yeah.
this is my opinion, but what it is, so.
all right.
So Tom Chambers is a retired math teacher from Lowell High School. So making presentations with him on the board is really interesting. You gotta make sure your math is, because we work with him in Westboro, so
He's a good man.
he's a cool guy, yeah,
Yeah.
but math teachers are,
Show your
gotta
work.
get it right, so,
Oh, he was a man at Lowell High School, huh?
yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
See how engineers were bad. It's-
That's funny.
Mathematician.
All right, EF,
Question.
sorry, go ahead.
Louis, do the vice chairs tend to rotate the chair, or is it an annual, is it
No, it's 2 years.
2 years?
It's 2 years. So Tom Chambers was the vice chair for 2 years.
Okay,
And usually the chair of the board policy committee steps in, which would be Karen Hardy from Santa Clara. But she couldn't do it, so then they voted me in. So I'm the vice chair for 2 years, and then we'll see.
okay.
Nice.
We'll see. There's four directors still left from the original Bosco that was formed. So there's Bro from Brisbane, Randy Bro.
Randy, no,
Yeah,
he's not elected.
yeah, but he's
He's appointed.
director. You don't have to.
Oh, I guess it's true, you can be.
Yeah, he can be appointed, yeah.
Yeah.
We,
Okay.
Alameda County.
Alameda County. John,
John Reed, Picolati,
Tom?
Tom
Daly
Picolati,
City, right?
and me, 4. And Nicole, obviously, because she was there when Art Jensen was still there. Those are the only people left. Everybody else is new.
Doesn't Art Jensen show up from time to time at the WMR meetings or?
He showed up one time, not this meeting, the one before, for the 20th anniversary of Bosco. But we never see him anymore. He moved
Yeah.
to, I think, North Carolina now
Oh,
with the
I
daughter.
thought I saw him at one of the Zoom meetings or something.
Well, Zoom was before my time
Okay,
here.
yeah, that's true, that's true.
I don't know, I know I've met him a couple times over the years, but I think it was quite a while ago.
Yeah, no, he's out completely. He just came just to be celebrated because he was the first, CEO. But he moved to the East Coast with his daughter, and he's getting up there in age
Yeah, he's
too.
up there, yeah.
And he's his daughter. So anyway,
All right, report on the water system condition.
Yeah, water supply. So yeah, on page 75, the map of California, I think what's kind of interesting that you're not seeing on here, because the drought map looks pretty good. But if you look at the table on the right, you go down to the very bottom row, you see it says 1 year ago, right? On January 3rd, 2023, you look at the D3, D4 column, you'll see that 27% of California was under an extreme drought a year ago, right? And we got slugged with those atmospheric rivers. So, it'll be interesting to see next month in February's California map, how much the drought map changed. Because it pretty much all year long, it's been looking like this. And I think I've mentioned to you too, that, in my drives back and forth at home, stuff like that, I've just seen water still in these little creeks that typically are just dry. It's just telling me there's just water still oozing out of the hills and going in these little bodies of water. Just never see it. It's been interesting. On the next page, the reservoir conditions. Again, all the reservoirs state are still looking pretty good. Most of them are at historical averages, which is that green line in the middle of the bar chart there. Last year, the Shasta in the upper left, it was at 59% of its capacity. This year it's 115%, so again, the atmospheric once it started hitting in December and January and February, it just made a large dent in that, and it just kind of stayed throughout the entire calendar year 2023. Oroville right now is 128%. Last year was at 77. Don Pedro, because again, water bank, last year they're at 92%, this year they're at 116. And then the San Luis Reservoir in the middle on the left-hand side, this year's at 88%, last year's at 57%. But again, even throughout the state's water year last year, the amount of water that was just stored in all these facilities was able to, kind of put them back where they normally would be a normal year, Interesting. And then the next page, you just see the precipitation forecast is something that the SFPUC shares at the water managers meeting. It's interesting to see if they come true. I think the one in the middle, it's with Wednesday, the 10th of January through the 18th. Yeah, we got some rain, probably around that much rain, not a lot. I think on the next slide where you just kind of see the statewide, I picked a number of cities from this website that shows, what the rainfall's been like. And I picked the two time periods, July 23 to January 24, and then compare it to last year on January 7, 2023. What's interesting in the period July 23 to January 24, when you look at the bottom cities, Bakersfield down to Palm Springs, they're all well over 100%, and the ones to the north aren't. And again, you remember there's that tropical storm that went through in the fall, and it really hit them hard. And they got a lot of water. They almost got as much water with that storm as they normally get an entire year, and it's still kind of reflected in this table. And then again, if you compare that first, series of columns in the left middle and with the ones on the right, last year we had literally like double the amount of water we would normally have for that time period. This year, it's kind of more like normal, more average. Even though we're a little below average, it's more typical. On the next page, the Hetch Hetchy precipitation. I think Kat, I wasn't able to go to the water management meeting, but I think Kat was saying that Steve Ritchie said let's call it a snow drought. This is precipitation, but still, the snow kind of falls precipitation up in the Hetch Hetchy of the regional system. And you can see the 2024 red line, well below what happened last year, well below the 30-year median.
Did you say this is year one of a drought? Not beginning?
Yeah, well, it could be. It's early to say because you'll never commit to anything as observed.
The season, no.
But currently it looks like a snow drought.
Snow drought, Haven't had a lot of rain. And then on the next page, the upcountry precipitation index, you can see it. There just hasn't been a lot of rain up in the Sierra Nevadas. And then you go to the next page, you look at the snowpack, and it kind of mirrors the rain. It just hasn't been a lot of snow in the Sierra, just well below what it was last year and below the 30-year median, the black line. Bay Area hasn't looked too bad. So far, the water year starting October, we've had just a little under 7 inches, or actually a little over 6 3/4 inches. The historical median is about 7.5 inches, so we're about 90% of historical median, which isn't too bad.
Yeah.
On the next page, the regional storage conditions comparison. I put in where we are right now on January 2nd, and also January 3rd last year and January 3rd in 2022. And when you kind of look at overall water storage conditions, the things that stick out to me are in the Tuolumne system, the water bank. This year, it's got 558,000 acre feet in it. Last year, around the same time, it had almost 150,000 acre feet less at 413. And then in 2022, it had a couple of 100,000 feet less at 348. That's just a big change. Again, with all the rain and snow we had last year, just filled up the water bank. And it just, made an impact. Keep in mind that right now, all of our water supply is coming from the local systems, right? The Crystal Springs Reservoir, water's going through the Harry Tracy treatment plant. That's supplying the water here. And on the East Bay, it's the San Antonio and the Calaveras going through the Sonoma water plant because they're working on the tunnel. They're doing maintenance on the tunnel. They're going to be doing it for the next several years between, I think it's December 5th through March 5th. It's like a 100-day period that, you know, there's not gonna be any water coming from Hetch Hetch in the winter time while they're doing that maintenance work. And that's why some of the reservoir levels here in the local Bay Area system in 2024 are a little bit lower than what maybe they might be, is because we're just using the water from those reservoirs.
That'd be a cool tour.
What,
That tunnel.
the tunnel, yeah, yeah,
Let's go scuba diving.
They drain it, I think.
yeah. On the next page, 84, is the total deliveries, and literally the end of calendar year 23 is what is reflected. And what's just interesting is, we ended up calendar year 2023 at 140 million gallons a day at that very last week of December, which put it above calendar year 2024, but interesting, right around the same number as calendar year 2015, which was like a really dry year. I mean, that was my first year here, and I just remember how dry it was and how much our customers here conserve water, something like 20% reduction by our customers here, and it was reflected. But it was interesting that our water use this year tapered down even below at the end of the year, you know, where it was in 2015. And the next page just shows our annual consumption here with that same chart, you know, and our use here actually was above 2015 and in 2022, just a little bit, not much. So we purchased about 2.5% more water in December 23 than we did in December 22. And the per capita was 48 gallons per person per day during December.
So granted, that was just the last month,
Just the last month, right? It's not an average for the entire year, like just the last month.
because I'm eyeballing this and it makes 2023 look like the lowest of anything on here.
2023 is the purple, so what we purchased was the 77,000 units. And yeah, and that's what we purchased, and the per capita is a number that's calculated, Brandon calculates that number, it's something that we submitted, and it's based on use, so it's not exactly related to what we purchased, because we're gonna have losses in this and that. But however that calculation comes out, it came out to 48 gallons per day per person.
I guess my point is, if you look at the whole year, I mean, the closest competition looks to me, again, eyeballing at 2015, and looks to me like we use less in 2023 than 2015.
2015 is the red, yeah.
So at one point, and I'm not sure specifically, this was included in here, we revised the population number based on the 2020 census. Basically, we looked at the population projection we had from the last water management plan, which is based on ABAG, based on yada, 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 you know. And we got the actual 2020 census, and we saw that the population of Belmont itself in the 2020 census was higher than our estimate for a whole service area. And so we updated it, and so that could be a factor in there. I mean, I have to play with the numbers to see exactly, but it could be because that, you know, that census trip was from 2020 onward.
If anything, that would make 2023 even more impressive, because there's more people here than there were in any of these other years. We use less water. I'm thinking this is something that we could say, hey, Belmont, you did a great job. You use less water possibly in what, 60 years, 70 years, 80 years? This could be a record.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. I mean, I think that the people in the community here they get it compared to other places. But, you know, we talk with some of the other communities in the Boston meetings, because again, the nature of their community. And what is it one of the cities that just got more apartments? They have a lot of single family homes. I mean, their per capita use was.
Westboro is really low.
Westboro is very low,
43
Daly City is very low,
Daly
North
City, there you go.
Coast,
Yeah.
areas that are, you know, have a lot more just precipitation, have smaller yards. They, you know, and East Palo Alto also, it's warmer, but it has very, you know, low use. They get, you know, 39 gallons per capita.
Yeah, I'm not saying we're the best in the
No.
Bay
No,
Area,
no, I
We're
just.
doing great.
our community. This looks to me like a potential communication thing to communicate. Is that, and obviously we're influenced by weather and so on, but still.
And the census.
And census making it harder, we did it anyway.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying you increase the denominator of your population and your per capita goes down.
Yeah,
So the math is a little bit.
Yeah. I'm assuming our per capita is also might be our record too, but
Yeah, I
just
don't
looking at this.
Well, wasn't it 58 2 months ago or something
Sure.
like that?
Yeah,
It was up during the summer.
yeah, in the summertime it's higher.
Good for the billboard.
Right.
That's right. All right, I changed my mind. on
Too
the
soon.
billboard.
Billboard on the sound wall, billboard on the sound wall.
Then they'll crash because they're trying to do the calculations there.
Yeah.
Anyway, maybe in our conservation message, we could, conservation message saying, 2023 did a record good job conserving water.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. And then, you know, so a lot of our messages is gonna surround raising our rates, so we do have to be careful of like, yeah, you're using very little water, so
And
we want to raise
here's
your
more
rates.
money.
It's always a fun needle to thread.
We're gonna have to be careful without messing.
All right, any other questions on the commission's report? Hearing none, conservation report?
I'm gonna take a crack at that because Brandon's not here. And so I guess that's the first, on the first page, our subject one is submittal of the 2022 annual water loss report. So that's something that is new for us. We had to submit and we got to submit it on time. And what was interesting here, if you read what he's got, and on the next page, there's a chart, right? And basically, our score, our tier, we're kind of right in the middle. And something that kind of stuck to me when I was reading this, it has to do or revolve around our water loss. And I remember Kat and I were talking about this, and I remember hearing this from Brett Chester when I first got here, is that our water loss, what we calculated here, our water loss was something like below 4%. I mean, just some kind of crazy ass number, crazy number. Because typically the rule of thumb has been, if you're losing 10%, you're doing pretty good, and we're here losing 4%. And I remember Kat and I talking about this thing, when we do this water audit and they're gonna see that 4% number, they're gonna say, what are you guys smoking over there? And that's just kind of crazy, and it might work against us. And I think it did. I think that's why, when you look at that chart on the next page where we're kind of in the middle, it's because, we had just such a really low water loss. It just, maybe that's not quite right. And, you probably need to take a look at some other things kind of going forward. And that's kind of the way I'm looking at some of this.
So this data validity score, what it also incorporates is kind of the level of, it's really data validity, not water loss, this component. It's like, how much confidence do we have in your numbers? And so, we have a lot of practices that, check our billing practices and, all these little things. And there's further steps we could go, like we could hire an independent third-party auditor to come in and audit our whole, billing process every couple of years. And that would increase our data validity score, all of these things. So, us being kind of in the middle, it's where I think
Room for
particularly for an
improvement.
agency our size, there's some room for improvement. And, we look at the individual scores and we have, identified some things we want to work on here to improve our data validity. But it's more, I think it's reflective that we're doing kind of a reasonable level for an agency our size of being
I mean,
confident.
the other part of this with data, it's like, how much money do we want to throw at the problem of the data versus throw at the problem of the water loss? You can throw a lot of money at auditing things and not move the needle on the water loss, or you can spend money on trying to mitigate water loss on reasonably valid data. I think I prefer the latter, not the former, if I remember the order, what I just said correctly.
Has this changed over the years? I mean, 10 years ago, did we have much higher losses?
I don't remember when it started. I don't think it started 10 years ago. I think we have fewer years than that.
Our loss, I
But-
don't remember.
And I have to say, this is something that a little bit worried me, right? Is our losses were so low historically. I was like, oh no, now that we have new people doing the audit and maybe our documentation of what we did before could have been better. But okay, we're kind of sort of reinventing the wheel here. Our numbers suddenly, and now, the state has set our standard. Our standard is basically, you're doing good, don't, increase your water loss and you're good. But it's so I was like, oh no, are we gonna come out of this audit
Next time, yeah.
up high because we're just using different data, taking a different look at it, whatever. So I was very pleasantly, pleased with the result that it was really consistent, and a little, lower than our standards. So,
No, I
That
was,
suggests good data, right?
yeah,
It does.
well, I was
It
thinking
does.
more in terms of when we replaced all of the meters with AMI, all of a sudden we had a lot more accurate meters and they always went up. The amount of water that we were accounting for on the new meters was higher than the old meters that were consistently undercounting. Okay,
And people got mad.
Yeah,
because everybody said, oh, they put a new meter in and now my water bill is 20% higher. Because the AMI meters were more accurate, they've been calibrated in. And the old meters have been there slowly spinning
yeah.
for 20 years or whatever it was, type of thing.
Well, now we're back with 10-year-old AMI meters that need to be replaced, so we're good.
Yes,
I'll have to look at when our
Just
first
about.
audit happened, 'cause I only looked the last couple of years focused on, trying to, do this one when we worked on
because
it.
it'd be interesting to see what the loss rate was
Yeah,
when we only had 30% of the meters in AMI or whatever it was.
yeah.
Because when was it, 2019? 18,
When
we finished
AI
out,
at 19.
19.
All I know is the
But
first,
we put a lot of them in those 2 years.
Yeah, yeah.
the first water loss audit I did was with Matt, with the city of Burlingame, when the regulation first came out, so
That was a long
it
time
was a
ago.
while ago. I don't think.
That table looks familiar. I think it was the same table. Well, part of this too is what does San Francisco do to calibrate their meters? They just issued that massive calibration report that we're still trying to sort through. Are their meters accurate too?
And we lost points on that. because
Yeah.
They don't, they're not transparent
No.
in what they do.
So, on this page, I think the page number got lost.
Oh, got lost.
But anyway, on that page with the chart, it says that, that we are on pace to fall below the UWUO standards. So we beat it, we were fine. And at the bottom, the footnote says LAO says these standards are unreasonable. Sounds like we might not think they're unreasonable, at least if we don't have any problem hitting that.
It is a saga with these urban water use objectives and the standards development. They're, DWR is like 2 years behind, right? So I think, when you dig into the LAO's analysis, as well as all the, the Aqua's criticism and Bosca's criticism of the standards, some of them are on the CII standard, which actually doesn't go into the calculation of your objectives. It's outside of that. Those are definitely a mess, and I have no idea where those are gonna land at this point. And then some of them are on the outdoor water use and the way they have the standard ratcheting down over time. A lot of criticisms are that they're not realistic. And so the objectives right now, before they start ratcheting down, we're in a great position. And depending on how you look at it, and we've spent some time, but given that these keep moving, it's such a moving target, we haven't spent an enormous amount of time looking at it. Further out, we're in less of a good position. And we'll have to, look at that and increase our conservation to get there. But those are the things that it's like, just how efficient can you make outdoor landscaping all over your whole district across the state? It's, at some point, it's not that, the criticism is not that realistic or cost effective, so. There, I mean, I wanna, like, Bosca's criticism letter was at least 20 pages, Aqua's was longer. There's a lot of effort that went into analyzing the proposed regulations, so.
Thing I'll just mention here is on subject number 5, the calendar, the calendar award ceremony. So next month in February, we're going to have the young people there to announce the calendar awards. We, at one of our safety meetings, we all got to pick the different calendars, and so we'll be ready to have that. So, Mr. President, have your shoot on, suit and tie.
Not gonna happen. I'm not Louis. To get my jeans.
Don't do it for yourself.
I do.
You do it for the children. Come on. You did it with a time before.
Do
I
not
remember.
project, do not, I did, that was a while ago.
That's
You
right.
got a picture of that? We want to see
I
a
know.
picture.
He did it
That was
before.
pre-COVID,
That was-
after COVID, it's
Yeah.
jeans only.
I'm gonna do this by Zoom, man, be careful. 9A, managers reports, general manager.
Budget parents.
All right.
I'm not wearing a tie, but.
So first thing in my report is having to do with the local chapter of the CSDA. So there was another meeting on the 16th. It was a nice Zoom meeting in the evening. So there, it was much better attended by a lot more districts. So, they're working on getting it going. There's some housekeeping things that need to be done, like dusting off the bylaws that haven't been updated since the 90s, maybe, I don't know, allowing Zoom meetings, figuring out how to
You have an
collect
advocate
fees.
now. You have Virginia Chancarelli as an advocate.
Yeah. So there, so there's a committee that was selected to work on the bylaws with the help, of course, with our CSDA representative. The chapter has kind of lost ability to access the bank account that, because it wasn't active, but the person who had access moved and the bank never changed their address. So, there's little things like that, regaining access to the bank account, but it's moving. The plan will be to meet quarterly, hybrid meeting. If you want to go to Granada in person, feel free, or Zoom, the second month of each quarter. So the next one will be in May. We would have, a slate of officers elected.
Okay, the date in May,
I don't think the date is set now, but I will send it as soon as I get it.
please.
So that's that. Staff anniversaries. So Michael Anderson celebrated 25 years of service this month. And, you will be invited to next month's board meeting when he's more available. And we'll have a lunch for him as a staff, February 6th. And I don't know if the invites can send out for that, but certainly the board members are invited to that lunch. Misty also celebrating 20 years of service, so she'll also be here, and we haven't scheduled the lunch yet, but it's coming soon. So really, really fun to have so many people celebrating big milestones like that. Dairy Lane rehab, just, obviously the short update before the big update next month. We've been working with Nolan Tam to focus on the plan for Folger Drive, visioning it as an emergency operations center to supplement Dairy Lane, and also kind of, satellite operations and satellite yard rather. And, we have rough cost numbers estimated there, and identified, the key things there. We had our meeting with staff from Diane Pappen's office last 2 weeks ago. And, I think the meeting went very well. Louis was there as well as Brenna. And so the next step and what I'm working on is crafting a formal request letter and making sure it, kind of accurately represents our needs. Taking, some of her advice into account. I think
Speaking of that letter, would it be a good idea to send a draft to that lady first?
I was gonna call her and ask and verify that it's appropriate before sending it, but yeah, that's my.
Because, we could have the best worded letter, but it may not hit all the points.
She gave us a lot of advice on, types of approaches. So,
Okay.
yeah, that's my goal, is to work as closely with her as to get that done. And then, it's not in here, but I wanted to mention, I did send everyone an email this morning. Registration for the Aqua Conference is now open. So with the JPIA portion included, it's May 6th through 9th. So please think about if you want to go. It's in Sacramento, and let us know when we can get you registered. And for the whole thing, or with or without JPIA. And then, I certainly have more things in here, so if there's any questions on the other items, just let me know.
Yeah, the S prep or whatever we're calling it now, seems to change every couple months. This draft thing, is that available? Can we see it?
Yeah, I don't think there's any reason not to send it. It's a draft report, of course.
Draft report.
But yeah, if you want.
Sure.
They don't send it. Me.
Thanks.
Anything else? Operations manager.
Yeah, on the bottom of page 97, I always like to just kind of point out, in December, the number of underground service order requests we have. So typical of the,
I want to comment on that.
Yeah.
I actually was just reviewing this for us, because obviously we do them too. You have more than we do in Palo Alto.
you're,
No, I think you're making up the number.
Wow.
You gotta be cooking the books.
yeah, I'm cooking the book.
We have 150.
150?
I got 3 utilities too.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
That's interesting.
Jeez.
I thought you were gonna say, yeah, we got
You
about
gotta
3
be
times that.
micro development.
That's what it is. Yeah.
You got
All
too
the
much red,
development
you got
done,
too
it's
much
all
red
moving
tape.
here.
Oh, that's for sure.
That's probably what it is.
Counting new,
That's just
or are you
tickets.
counting
It's
reload?
just tickets that
Also
come
That's
in.
just- I don't know. I probably, that could just be new, not relocate. So if this includes relocates or extensions, that kind
I
of
think
thing.
it includes both.
Well, I mean, so the 233 was.
But still, we're
much
like
less.
twice the size easily.
We're
Three
just such hard
times.
workers here.
3 times the size of what we are.
3 times the size when, like, we're a 10 MGD system. So, you know,
Wow.
And spread out.
and spread out with a bunch of commercial.
Yeah, I would have thought you would have been 3 times the number of tickets.
I would too. That's why I thought you were cooking the books.
Well, these will get, they land every day. I mean, the slugs. And so just, you know, the 233 just reflects it's winter time, you know, the construction slows down. Belmont doesn't allow much work going on, but still we get requests. But it's down from the average of 260. And then on the next page, you know, Michael has been emphasizing maintenance on hydrants and valves. So actually it's up quite a bit. And the good news is we took on a new employee this week. He's a certified operator. And then we also interviewed a few more people. They're all certified operators. And we made an offer to one. And then Kat and Michael are gonna interview the other 2 people to see if they're a fit for us. So hopefully in the next couple of months, we'll be back up to full crew out in the field, which allows us to start focusing on some more maintenance of the hydrants and valves and our water tanks and so on. We've been down. I don't know when the last time we were at full capacity out in the field. It's been a while.
Don't jinx
It's
it.
been a while. Yeah, don't jinx it. That's all I was gonna
I
say.
saw they took down the tree on the person.
At Urson, yeah,
They worked on Martin Luther King Day.
yeah.
I hope we weren't paying them overtime.
Private company.
It's a private company.
Brenda, that hydrant you had, where is, that's at the very top then, right?
I'm not sure where it's located, Louis. I just got the report of the hydrant being hit.
40,000 gallons.
Yeah,
That's a lot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have to remember too, that again, you know, there's not anybody lives here in town that can respond to it. So depending on who's on call, you know, if it's Stan or Chris, they're up, you know,
Oh, I wasn't thinking that's a given, but
yeah.
because of the location of that hydrant, that probably took a while for it to get reported probably.
That may have been too, yeah.
One of the things that's just FYI, because, well, not relevant to the hydrant, but to the living is, I'm actually in conversations with the assistant director of public works oversees the plant. There's a building, we're looking at buying, just happens to be right adjacent to the plant, and commercial real estate to the tank. So it was on the market for 20 million, now we're looking at 12.
Wow.
Possibly, but then doing a TI on it, making office space out of it, and maybe making a bunkhouse out of it too, because they've got staff that they need to run 24/7 for the plant. And then we have on-call people that, you know, driving in sometimes, we won't let them be on call, because they live further than 30 miles away. But if someone wanted to be on call and make the money or whatever, or they came in, having something flexible for that, so.
I mean,
Are
that's
you offering space for?
Yeah, you offer space to us. We'll take some of your tickets. We'll take some of your USA
I
tickets.
might, yeah, I mean, you know, so, but I mean, that's something that we're seriously thinking about, like, how do we bring, you know, staff closer?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the idea of the Dairy Lane and Folger rehab is maybe having some bunk space there that somebody on call is bunk there for the night, you know, they're not living there, you know, they're not paying rent, but you know, they're, because like I said, there's nobody lives here in town. I think the closest guy right now is in San Mateo. you know, but everybody else comes from out of town, you know, the experienced guys all come from out of town, and it's, you know.
I mean, when the board told the former general manager to tear down the, whatever we wanted to call it.
Oh, there, the Dairy Lane?
Yeah,
The second floor.
the second floor that was built without a permit on 90 days.
Yeah,
The idea wasn't misplaced to have the space, but, you know, it was unfortunate, the look of it wasn't quite right. Just that, and walking in and two lazy boys in a big high-def TV. But I think that was the right idea, which is to have a place where people can, and an employee there doing their laundry. It was, the idea is right, you know, I mean, to a certain extent, it was ahead of its time. So, it was just implementation was off. Remember that rainy night we walked up the steps?
I remember it well.
All right.
I was looking at the sprinkler system.
It was raining.
Fire sprinkler,
Oh, the fires were there?
they were not.
That's what I was gonna say.
Oh, hell.
That's
She
all
was
you
like,
worried
well,
about.
you have to look at that, didn't you? Duh, of course.
Yeah, the whole thing, you're walking up a set of stairs like that steep, going, there's no way this is the code. Anyway, all right, administrative services manager.
All right, I guess the highlight for me is that we have finished the proposals and the task orders, at least a good number of them, to work with Tammy. And so she's working on some projects, which is really cool. And thanks everybody for getting your certifications up to date. And I was gonna talk about the recruitment, but thanks, Brenna. Stole my
I'm
thunder.
sorry.
It's fine, it's fine.
Just don't do it again. Look at that thing. Just don't do it again.
No, I'm totally kidding. We're excited about the potential candidates. They are all operators.
Yeah,
So, the hire for today, the guy that started this week, he's a maintenance tech, but the other three people are all operators. So that part we're pretty excited about. And then, we meet with James every week, and that's going really well. We're making some progress in the whole finance department. It's fun in finance.
It's a synonym, right? You know,
It
fun
is,
and finance.
fun
I
and
mean, it's the same
finance.
thing, yeah.
Fun for
And
some
then,
people.
Yeah,
we,
exactly.
you may have seen your W-2s are on your desks,
Yes, we did.
and so, and timesheets.
I filled mine
So,
out. I owe you like 6, I think.
and I did send everybody, well, all the directors, emails with the stats on your
Whatever you're
your
missing.
timesheets, yeah. So we're kind of getting current now,
Good.
Yeah.
and, that's really all I've got for today.
Great. District engineer.
Yeah, we're spending money, which is the right place to spend it, and putting infrastructure in the ground.
Oh,
So highlight four projects.
I was thinking it's coming up.
Harbor Boulevard, I'll talk about in a minute. Tacoma Lincoln, we finally heard back. That's our next CIP that's in design right now, so that's the next one that's gonna go out to construction. We finally heard back from Division of Drinking Water with like a slew of questions, but they come one at a time. So they send one, you answer it, they send another one. Like, you just give us all your questions at the same time. So literally, I think it's been going on for like 4 or 5 times. We're pretty close to wrapping that up. We're excited to get that out to bid. If we go down to the harbor project, all the work is done, everything's tied in, the punch list is done. We're negotiating one last change order with the contractor. We've reached resolution on that. We just gotta write it up. So basically, in February, we're gonna come back with a recommendation to close out the project, or the recommendation to accept the project. The one outstanding item that's not contractor related, but that's written up on page 112. Those are the 2 outstanding items that are left on this project is County of San Mateo traffic signal item. We've been reporting on this, or I've been reporting on this every month. We're nowhere closer to resolving this. It doesn't impede us from closing out the project, you know, because we can cut the contractor loose and try to figure this out, how to close out our permit. We've elevated on our side to district council, and district council's been in touch with county council, because we couldn't resolve it at our level. And so, we don't know where that's gonna go, to be quite honest with you. They're not letting us close out the permit. But we really don't know what that means, right? Because we don't have a bond or, you know, we don't, and we don't work with San Mateo that often. It's just right here, you know, so. Like I said, we'll see where that goes. The projects, so that chart on the bottom, the projects that you think are gonna go good. I thought Harbor was gonna be, I think I said this before, wide road, no problem, easy peasy. We hit rock for half the way. It was just a not a fun project to finish up, but we got it done. The main is in, everybody's in service. So the change orders on this right now are tracking at 5.1%. We're probably going to be close to that 10% number that is industry average, but for us, it's pretty high, right? That's for underground construction in California, it's 10%. We've never been that high. And so for this project, we'll see where we land with the final negotiations on that change order number 2, but we're gonna be south of the 10%, but we're gonna be pretty close to it. Nothing else I want to report on Harbor. Like I said, we're gonna come back next month with that final change order and a notice of acceptance. All work is done in the field and everybody's in service. The project that I thought was going to be nightmarish, knock on wood, and I know I'm gonna eat this word in a couple of months, is actually going well. That's Old County Road. Nobody really gets excited about it as much as I do, but one of the oldest, if not the oldest piece of pipe in our district was taken out of service this last month. So 1930s vintage water main right outside, right here on Ralston, starting from Old County Road going east to Elmer. Elmer, yeah. So vintage 1935. I think it was the oldest piece of pipe in our district. Pardon me?
How big? How diameter?
6 inch. 6 inch cast iron.
Any lead loops on it?
I didn't even look, so just.
I'm just curious. They don't count on against the LCR.
I don't want to comment on anything about that pipe in public so I could just report that it's been taken out of service happily, but.
Let's just say I have concerns about some of that pipe that I have.
Yeah, well, ours is, you don't have to be concerned here. It's out of service for our district. So the toughest part of that project, so it goes all the way from here south to our border or our not property, our boundary. District boundary, which is opposite of F Street, essentially on the west side. The toughest part of this OCR project, the $4 million is $4.5 million project was right here, right? Ralston and on OCR going south, that had the most utilities and we're done with that portion. So there is, so if we go to page, let me bring it up on page, okay, the report is on page 120. 121, so we'll go to page 121. If you look at that chart, we're about a quarter of the way done with the project on dollar wise, and that pretty much tracks with linear footage installed. And we're tracking about 1.6% on change orders, and not only just dollars change orders but on schedule wise, they're ahead of schedule. Actually, their baseline schedule, and we haven't had any major issues. Big kudos to our construction management firm, Four Leaf. Fantastic folks. They're working at night, multiple shifts, getting everything covered. So the fact that you guys haven't heard from anybody, we haven't heard from anybody, the businesses aren't out, with pitchforks.
Any of the people because of noise?
No. So far, knock on wood, like I said, I hope I don't eat these words, but it gets less complicated going south.
Should be, yeah.
But
even staff this morning, they were out there near F Street because they were flushing the line for a segment of that transmission main coming from Redwood City. That's for some work that the contractor did. So they were out there at 4 o'clock this morning, flushing the line and taking samples. They take to the lab to find out if the guy did the job right, and the back T samples didn't show that there was some kind of contamination. So it's been a good mixture of the contractor doing good work, good construction management, and even staff. Staff helping out.
Yeah, it's not easy. I don't wanna give the impression that this project is easy or even constructing is easy. It's just that I think it was well planned out, and well designed and well being executed. So I think so far so good. I think we should be all proud as Mid-Peninsula, governance and staff that it's going so well. So, hopefully it continues. We're now going to shift further south and, all the way down to F Street and then work in San Carlos now. So we're done with the city of Belmont portion. We're working with 3 agencies, right? Belmont County and, San Carlos. The one thing that's not in this report, I just want to close with this, which was fantastic as far as like people holding grudges. We got a new requirement from the county of San Mateo about compaction that none of us had ever seen before, but it came right in the heels of the $70,000
Harbor industrial.
Harbor. So
Wow.
not on Harbor on this project, but same folks, right? We're dealing with the same public works folks. So just fascinating how the timing worked out on that one. So we're working through that. So that's all I got to report. All positive information at this point. So,
The only comment I've heard is that people haven't been happy with the fact that the signal lights got all screwed up at Ralston and El Camino, et cetera, because the loops got cut, and they haven't figured out how to get them all straightened
I
out.
think we did our portion.
Yeah.
But they're still working on it because they got other upgrades that they're doing. And so it's not related to us, but obviously we were digging through there, so we get blamed for it. So if anybody does ask, please refer them back to us. We're more than happy to answer it. Or if you'd like to answer it, you could say that all the things that we touch have been repaired, which is a factual statement. That's all I have to report. Any questions on change orders? They're all listed there, or anything else in the report? Let me know.
That's good.
Moving on, financial reports.
That's me. So,
It's tough being last.
I was starting to get sleepy, and then you start talking about spending all the money. I'm like, no, stop spending all the money.
It's for good stuff, though. We're getting assets.
Yeah, so overall, we're doing really well. We're 50% through the year. Commodity charges we're at 56% of the budget. So you would think, as of December, you'd be at 50 for, straight down the line. But we're actually at 56% right now, or 57% on the water commodity charges. On the budget to actual schedule, so essentially our operating revenues are 55% of our budget. So, we're definitely trending up. The water commodity charges as compared to last year is about 10% higher as of this time last year. And operating revenues are about 7 to 8% higher than it was at this time last year. The only outlier in this is the system capacity charges. Last year, we had a $1.5 million capacity charge, and we haven't received anything yet.
Yeah.
So when you compare the last year's revenues to this year, we are down because of that piece. That's the only piece that's really messing with the numbers a bit. Everything else is pretty much balancing out with the expenditures, with the exception of purchased water. As we get more water revenue, of course, we're gonna have to pay for more water because there's supply and demand. But the water that we're paying for hasn't increased as much as the water that we're receiving money from. So we're definitely trending better on the water revenues than we are on the purchased water. And then the only other significant change really is for professional services, where we've actually dropped about almost 10% for professional services as compared to this time last year. And then on the next page, we've got, we went through that Wolf Hansen report about the purchase of future bonds.
Here's kind of the results related to the late fund, the COPS funding. That's held with Bank of New York Mellon and then Zion's Bank. So far we've received about $30,000 from just investments alone, just interest alone. And then we've also had an appreciable fair market gain of about 146,000. So the investments that we hold currently, if we were to go to market as of December 31st, we would receive an additional 146. So that's what they were talking about when you sell those investments early because you've got cash flow. If we were to do that as of December 31st, we would have had an additional $146,000 inflow. The rate of returns as of December 31st for LAIF were almost 4%. So they're talking now it's just above 4%. For Zion's Bank, for cash equivalents, that's essentially money market funds. That's at 5%, and that's pretty much been fixed the entire time we've had those. And then the fixed income, which are those GSEs, the government-sponsored entity bonds, those are about 2.5%. So I think we're gonna, once the new bonds are purchased, that'll increase significantly. And then on that last page, we just have the summary of what we've spent through the COPS funding. And for the various capital projects that we've done so far, we're at 30% of budget. There's certainly other elements that we haven't considered or that haven't started yet, such as the Dairy Lane Operations Center rehab, of course. And that's a bit that's all, folks.
Any questions? Hearing none, thank you very much. It's always nice to be money selling. Director reports, for Director Schmidt.
I was gonna send in a photo and I forgot, but I brought in, did a little show and tell like 2 months ago with that water and energy efficiency savings kit that I took out from the library. That was kind of mediocre, the kit, but I like the idea. So I don't know, Kat or anyone else can keep an eye on things that we might want to have as a loaner thing for people to go out and take out. But it just didn't have that much stuff. It had one of those dye things. It was supposed to have one of those dye things. It didn't have it. Somebody used it on, but didn't return it or something like that. And then
We have that if you want.
oh, okay, great. And then they had one of the faucet replacement things that reduce gallons per minute. And my faucet was the wrong one, but taking it off destroyed the gasket on there. So I had to go out and buy one. And get one.
That's because you're not familiar with the rule of thumb that every project requires 3 trips to Home Depot. Like,
But-
can't you just one?
But when I took it out, I think the original, the rubber gasket in there was the original gasket from 1995 when our condo was built. Cause you just touch the thing, my fingers covered in black. I was like, I'm drinking this. So, that was something to think about. Oh, and the last thing was I think was really useful. It said, which I didn't know, maybe other people knew this. Your hot water heater has a vacation setting. Did you guys know that?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Okay, a lot of people knew that. Anyway.
Oh, we did. I didn't want to say yes. but- Sorry.
Well, I didn't know that. Maybe some of our customers don't know that. Maybe that's some, a thing to put in there. And that story had a tragic ending, because I pointed this out to my wife. And she said, wait a minute, we can turn up the hot water heater?
That's
Like,
awesome.
no. Why did I show this to you?
Oh my God.
50 degrees.
Steam.
They should talk about the concept of second-degree burns and,
Yes,
that kind of
yes.
stuff. That's awesome.
So
Story of
that's
my
my
life,
report.
Awesome. Louis?
That's why they have water valves.
Yeah, so, one thing I forgot to mention when we went to the BOSCA meeting, we're doing the Pledge of Allegiance in the beginning. And, everybody stood up and we're looking around the room, there's no flag. So, so in one of the handouts, so we had one of the directors holding this flag, and everybody's pointing.
But why was the flag in the PowerPoint to be, oh, I guess. the
Because it's
flag.
called-
It's the,
Roll call, salute to the flag, so there was a flag. Somebody put it-
wow.
God, yep, that was funny, but that's what it
Okay.
Let's see, we had the finance committee meeting at the end of last month, but, and then HIA, we had a presentation by Len Masterman, Madam from One Shoreline. And he was talking about what they do and what they don't do and what might happen with Belmont Creek. And it got down to, gee, it'll be a while before they figure out how to get 10-year storm drainage protection for that piece of the creek. And there are all sorts of complications and jurisdictional issues associated with a regional plan to get levee protection that will protect us from the bay going forward in the long term. He did say that they were considering having a study to see what they would need to do to create special benefit assessment districts that could fund capital projects for potentially drainage and flood protection measures. But they would essentially have to create new benefit assessment zones, get them voted into place. If I remember correctly, the state is looking at lowering the voting number for the types of benefit assessment zones. So instead of 66%, you could get it down to 55% or something like that.
Theoretically, that would apply if you lived within the sort of floodplain, if you will, not.
Well, the question would be whether or not the zone should be associated with the entire drainage basin, because that's producing the water, and there'd be rates for agricultural land versus commercial land versus abundant impervious, or some benefit calculation. So it wouldn't just be people in the floodplain funding their own flood protection measures. It would be a overall drainage measure.
I'm gonna guess that opinion on that, the opinion on that is gonna vary depending on whether you live in the floodplain or not.
Exactly. Nobody said it was an easy idea.
Yeah.
So, but it's something that, we may want to think about when we're talking about Dairy Lane, and what that means to us and what level of protection we're going to get and how we live with that. So we may want to have him come and talk to us about what projects would be needed to protect the low-lying land in Belmont that we sit in.
Very good. Anything else?
No,
All right, I have nothing to report. Communication. You're not a director.
I know, I just had a comment, I forgot to mention under engineers report, whenever the right.
Go ahead.
It's very self-serving, but, we do a budget analysis every 6 months on our projects, and two of them are getting close to having the budget expended. We've communicated with the general manager, and it's within her signing authority, but she'll report it out, or Rena, under the general manager's or AGM report. But I wanted to make sure that I communicated with the board, because we've committed to doing that before the budgets run out, and we're still 2-3 months for that. But some of the negotiations took longer with the contractors for change orders and so forth. So we'll be communicating that with the general manager.
Any communications?
Nothing that we've received.
Okay. So with that, we will reconvene, take a break and then reconvene in closed session.
Yeah, just, hang on one second.
Not Monday.
We decided the 26th, correct, February 26th. No longer.
Can it be the 27th?
The 27th is the date that Matt likely, or he's not sure, he might have a hard conflict. Resume recording. Okay.
I report on?
Well, you're just bringing us
Oh,
back.
bring it back
into-
into open session,
And there's no report.
no report of elections. We are adjourned.